But what begins as a simple act of kindness sparks a connection no one saw coming. Glittering gala lights. The single dad and daughter stand awkwardly among the wealthy. Whispers, judging stares. Then the daughter speaks boldly, silencing the crowd. Yet behind the smiles, danger lurks. Her powerful family vows to tear them apart. Secrets will be exposed, reputations shattered, and one man's honor will face its greatest test. Can love built on honor survive the weight of wealth, power, and lies, or will sacrifice cost them everything? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the quiet southern roadside, painting the asphalt in streaks of amber and gold. Ethan Walker's weathered pickup truck rumbled steadily along the two-lane highway, the familiar rattles and squeaks of comfort after a grueling day at his auto shop. His hands, bearing the honest marks of his trade in motor oil and calluses, rested easily on the steering wheel. In the passenger seat, his daughter Lily hummed along to an old country song on the radio. Her school books nestled in her lap. She glanced at her father's tired face, noting the smudge of grease across his cheek that he'd missed when cleaning up. "Long day, Dad?" she asked, turning down the radio's volume. Ethan managed a small smile. "Nothing I can't handle, sweetheart." Mrs. Johnson's transmission finally gave out, just like I warned her last month. "Did she bring you those chocolate chip cookies again?" "Sure did. Saved you some in my lunchbox." Their easy conversation was interrupted by the sight of a gleaming black Mercedes pulled onto the shoulder ahead, its hazard lights blinking urgently against the deepening dusk. A woman in an elegant navy business suit paced beside the vehicle, one hand pressed to her temple while the other clutched a cell phone. Lily straightened in her seat. "Dad, look." "I see it," Ethan said quietly, already slowing the truck. Years of military service had ingrained in him an instinct to help others in need, and he couldn't drive past someone stranded on the road, especially as darkness approached. He pulled the truck over, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The woman looked up, her expression a mixture of relief and wariness. Charlotte Whitmore's designer heels were clearly not meant for the rough shoulder of the highway, and she wobbled slightly as she took a step toward them. "Having some car trouble, ma'am?" Ethan called out through his open window, keeping his voice gentle and professional. Charlotte's shoulders sagged with visible relief at his friendly tone. "Yes, thank goodness you stopped. The engine just died, and I can't get a signal out here to call for help." She gestured helplessly at her phone. Ethan put the truck in park and turned to Lily. "Stay here for a minute, okay?" "Dad, I can help," Lily protested. "I've been learning, remember?" He smiled at her enthusiasm. "Next time, kiddo. Promise." Stepping out of the truck, Ethan approached Charlotte, conscious of his work-worn appearance next to her polished elegance. "I'm Ethan Walker," he introduced himself, keeping a respectful distance. "I own Walker's auto shop in town. Mind if I take a look?" Charlotte's perfectly styled hair caught the fading sunlight as she nodded. "Please. I'm Charlotte Whitmore. I was heading back to the city when everything just stopped." Ethan moved to the front of the Mercedes, noting its pristine condition. "Could you try starting it for me, ma'am?" Charlotte slipped into the driver's seat, and the engine made a telling click when she turned the key. Ethan didn't need his years of experience to recognize that sound. "Battery terminals," he muttered, more to himself than to Charlotte. He reached into his truck's toolbox, retrieving a few basic tools. "Lily, hand me that flashlight from the glove box, would you?" His daughter eagerly jumped out with the flashlight, unable to contain her curiosity. "Hi, I'm Lily," she said brightly to Charlotte, who smiled warmly in return. "It's nice to meet you, Lily." Ethan popped the hood, propping it open with practiced ease. The engine compartment was spotless, but his trained eye went straight to the problem. "Just as I thought. Your battery terminals are corroded. It's a common issue, especially in this humidity." He worked quickly and efficiently, cleaning the terminals with tools from his truck. His movements were precise, showing years of experience. Charlotte watched with interest as his strong hands made short work of the task. His focus, absolute. "You must be very good at what you do," she observed. Ethan glanced up briefly. "It's honest work. Been fixing cars since I was younger than Lily here." He gestured to his daughter, who beamed with pride. "Dad's the best mechanic in 3 counties, Lily declared. "He can fix anything." Charlotte smiled at the girl's enthusiasm. "I believe it. I've had this car serviced at the dealership in the city, but they never explained things this clearly." Ethan finished tightening the last connection. "Try it now, please." Charlotte turned the key, and the engine purred to life immediately. Her face lit up with genuine relief. "That's remarkable. Please, let me pay you properly for your time." She reached for her purse, pulling out her wallet. "No need, ma'am," Ethan said firmly, wiping his hands on a rag from his back pocket. "Just being a neighbor." "But surely, really," he insisted, his voice kind but firm. "Anyone would have done the same." Charlotte studied him for a moment, clearly unused to such refusal of compensation. There was something compelling about this man's quiet dignity, his unhesitating kindness with no expectation of reward. "Thank you, Mr. Walker. Both of you," she added, including Lily in her grateful smile. Ethan nodded, closing the Mercedes hood with a gentle click. "You should be fine now, but if you have any more trouble, my shop's just off Main Street in town. Can't miss it." He and Lily returned to their truck, and Charlotte watched them drive away, the old pickup's taillights growing smaller in the gathering dusk. She remained there for a moment, struck by the encounter. In her world of business meetings and social obligations, such simple, genuine kindness was rare indeed. The morning sun streamed through the grimy windows of Walker's Auto Repair, catching dust motes that danced in the air. Ethan wiped his hands on a red shop rag, studying the transmission he'd been working on since opening at 7. Classic rock played softly from an old radio perched on his toolbox, the familiar tunes keeping him company as he worked. The crunch of tires on gravel caught his attention. Through the open bay door, he watched a sleek black sedan pull into his lot, not the usual type of vehicle he saw at his modest shop. The car gleamed in the morning light, its polished surface a stark contrast to the weathered building and oil-stained concrete. A tall man in a crisp uniform stepped out, his posture perfect as he straightened his chauffeur's cap. Ethan's eyebrows rose as he recognized the luxury car service logo from the city. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked, stepping forward while trying to brush some of the grime off his coveralls. The chauffeur's eyes took in the simple auto shop with its peeling paint and well-worn tools. "I'm looking for Mr. Ethan Walker." "That's me. I have a message from Mrs. Charlotte Whitmore." The chauffeur produced a cream-colored envelope from his jacket pocket, handling it with white-gloved hands. Ethan wiped his hands one more time before accepting the envelope. The paper felt thick and expensive between his fingers, his name written in elegant script across the front. He carefully broke the seal and pulled out a note card that probably cost more than his weekly grocery bill. "Dear Mr. Walker," he read silently, "I wanted to thank you again for your kindness yesterday. Your refusal of payment only confirms my impression of your character. I would be honored if you and your daughter would attend my annual charity gala this Saturday evening at the Magnolia Grand Hotel. The event supports veteran services, a cause I'm sure is close to your heart. Please consider this my personal invitation. Warmest regards, Charlotte Whitmore." A second card fell out, an official invitation with all the details printed in gold lettering. Ethan's stomach tightened. The Magnolia Grand was the fanciest hotel in the city, the kind of place where valet parking cost more than his hourly rate. "Mrs. Whitmore awaits your response," the chauffeur prompted, standing at perfect attention. Before Ethan could reply, the shop's side door burst open. Lily bounded in, her school backpack slung over one shoulder. She'd started stopping by the shop every morning to have breakfast with him before catching the bus, their little daily tradition. "Dad, is that the same car from yesterday?" Her eyes widened as she spotted the chauffeur and the invitation in her father's hands. "What's going on?" Ethan handed her the invitation. "Mrs. Whitmore invited us to some fancy party." Lily's eyes lit up as she read. "A gala at the Magnolia Grand?" She clutched the invitation to her chest. "Dad, we have to go." "Lily, I don't think—" "Please." She gave him the look that had been melting his resolve since she was tiny. "It's for veterans, Dad. You're a veteran." And Mrs. Whitmore was so nice yesterday. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of grease he didn't notice. "Honey, these kinds of events, they're not really our scene. I don't even own a suit anymore." "I can help with the dress code requirements," the chauffeur interjected smoothly, producing a business card. "Mrs. Whitmore has an account with Sterling's Formal Wear. They would be happy to assist with appropriate attire." Lily bounced on her toes. "See? It's perfect. And I can wear Mom's pearl necklace." Her voice softened. "You always say we should show gratitude when people are kind to us." Ethan's resistance crumbled as he looked at his daughter's hopeful face. She was right about gratitude, and he had to admit, Mrs. Whitmore's gesture seemed genuinely thoughtful. The veteran's cause touched something in him too. He'd lost too many friends not to care about that. He turned to the chauffeur. "Please tell Mrs. Whitmore we'd be honored to attend." The man nodded, the barest hint of a smile touching his professional demeanor. "Very good, sir. Sterling's will expect you this afternoon. Good day." He turned crisply and headed back to the car. Lily threw her arms around Ethan's neck, not caring about the grease on his clothes. "Thank you, Dad. It's going to be amazing." "Yeah, amazing," Ethan muttered, already feeling out of his depth. He watched the luxury sedan pull away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. The invitation felt heavy in his hand, like it carried the weight of all his uncertainties. Later that morning, after Lily had gone to school, Ethan stood in his small office, staring at the invitation on his desk. The morning light caught the gold lettering, making it shimmer. He thought about the kind of people who would be there: wealthy executives, society ladies, people who probably spent more on one dinner than he made in a week. His hands, roughened by years of mechanical work, seemed to mock the elegant script of the invitation. He'd been to fancy events before, during his military service, but that had been different. He'd worn a uniform then, had a clear role and purpose. This felt like stepping into another world entirely, one where he wasn't sure he belonged. The sound of a car pulling into the shop snapped him out of his thoughts. Through his office window, he watched Mr. Jenkins arrive in his ancient pickup truck, probably for the oil change they'd scheduled. This was his world: honest work, familiar tools, customers who knew him as just Ethan. The thought of mingling with Charlotte Whitmore's social circle made his palms sweat. One evening, he told himself firmly, picking up his tools. Just one evening for Lily's sake. But as he headed out to greet Mr. Jenkins, the weight of that upcoming Saturday night settled heavily on his shoulders, full of all the ways he might embarrass himself, and worse, embarrass his daughter, in that glittering world of wealth and privilege. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows of Ethan's modest two-bedroom home as he stood in front of his closet, frowning at the navy blue suit hanging in its protective plastic cover. He hadn't worn it since Tommy Jensen's wedding 3 years ago, and even then, it had felt tight across the shoulders. "Dad, did you find it yet?" Lily called from down the hall. "Yeah, found it." Ethan pulled the suit out, laying it carefully across his bed. "Question is whether it still fits." Lily appeared in his doorway, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching as her father held the suit jacket up against himself. Only one way to find out. Ethan slipped the jacket on, and immediately the shoulders felt snug. He moved his arms experimentally, hearing the fabric strain. "Well, that answers that question." "You look like the Hulk trying to wear Bruce Banner's clothes," Lily giggled, stepping into the room. "Thanks for that vote of confidence, kiddo." Ethan attempted to button the jacket, but it wouldn't quite close. "Your old man might have put on a few pounds of muscle since the last time I wore this. Mom would have said that's what you get for spending all your time lifting engines instead of going to fancy parties." Lily's voice softened at the mention of her mother, but her smile remained. Ethan's hand stilled on the buttons. "She would have, wouldn't she?" He looked at his daughter in the mirror, seeing Sarah's gentle eyes looking back at him. "She also would have known exactly how to fix this suit." "Good thing you've got me, then." Lily moved to his side, tugging at the jacket's seams with expert fingers. "Remember when Mom taught me to sew? I bet I can let this out just enough." "You sure about that?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Last thing I sewed was that patch on your Girl Scout vest, and we both know how that turned out." "Dad, that patch was practically hanging on by one thread." Lily laughed, the sound filling the room like sunshine. "Besides, Mom made sure I knew what I was doing. She said someone had to keep you presentable after she was gone." The words hung in the air for a moment, neither heavy nor light, just there, like Sarah's presence often felt in their home. Ethan squeezed his daughter's shoulder. "She'd be proud of you, you know that?" "Yeah," Lily nodded, blinking quickly. "Now take that jacket off before you split it completely. I need to work my magic." She held out her hand expectantly. Ethan carefully removed the jacket and handed it over. "What about you? Did you find something to wear?" "Oh, I almost forgot." Lily darted out of the room, returning moments later with a knee-length dark blue dress. "Remember this. Mom bought it for me last Christmas, but I outgrew it before I could wear it." "Outgrew it?" Ethan looked at the dress skeptically. "When did that happen?" "Dad, I'm 15 now. Girls grow, you know. She held the dress up against herself. But look what I did. Ethan watched as she showed him the alterations she'd made, letting down the hem and adjusting the waist. The careful stitching was nearly invisible, just like Sarah's work had always been. Your mom taught you well, he said softly. She taught us both well, Lily replied, setting the dress down carefully. Different things, but important things. She picked up his jacket again. Now let me fix this while you try on the pants. And please tell me you still have a decent dress shirt. Yes, ma'am, Ethan saluted, making her roll her eyes. White one in the back of the closet. Your mother made me keep it pressed. As Lily settled cross-legged on his bed with the jacket and her sewing kit, Ethan retrieved the pants and shirt. The familiar routine of them working together, even on something as unusual as preparing for a fancy gala, felt right. They'd learned to be a team after Sarah passed, filling in the gaps she'd left behind as best they could. Hey, Dad, Lily spoke up as she threaded a needle. Do you think Mrs. Whitmore will have fancy food at this thing? Because I've been watching cooking shows, and I still can't figure out what foie gras is. Ethan chuckled, checking the shirt for wrinkles. Honestly, sweetheart, I have no idea. But if they serve anything too fancy, we can always grab burgers on the way home. Deal. Lily grinned, then turned serious. You know, Mom would want you to go to this. She always said you needed to get out more. Did she now? Ethan raised an eyebrow, though his heart squeezed at the memory of Sarah's gentle prodding to be more social. She told me once that you were the best man she'd ever known, but you kept it hidden away in that shop of yours too much. Lily's fingers moved steadily with the needle, just as Sarah's had done countless times. I think she'd like Mrs. Whitmore. She seems nice. Like, actually nice. Not fake nice. Ethan considered this as he changed into the dress shirt. Your mother was always a good judge of character. So am I, Lily said firmly. I get that from her. Later that night, long after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling. The fixed suit hung ready on his closet door, but his mind wouldn't settle. Tomorrow night, he and Lily would step into Charlotte Whitmore's world, a world of crystal champagne flutes and classical music, of people who probably spent more on one meal than he made in a week at the shop. He rolled onto his side, punching his pillow into a more comfortable shape. What was he thinking? Agreeing to go? Sure, Charlotte seemed genuine and kind, but her world was so far removed from his own. He could already imagine the looks, the whispers behind manicured hands when the mechanic and his daughter walked in. The bedroom was quiet except for the soft whir of the ceiling fan and the distant sound of crickets through the open window. On his nightstand, illuminated by moonlight, sat a photo of Sarah in her favorite sundress, laughing at something just outside the frame. She would have known exactly what to say to calm his nerves. She always did. The Belmont estate loomed before them, its white columns gleaming in the evening light. Ethan's weathered pickup truck looked out of place among the sea of luxury vehicles that filled the circular driveway. He adjusted his navy tie for the 100th time, his calloused fingers feeling clumsy against the silk. Dad, stop fidgeting, Lily said, smoothing down her simple blue dress. You look fine. Ethan gave his daughter a grateful smile. At 15, she sometimes seemed wiser than her years. Thanks, kiddo. Ready? They climbed the wide marble steps together, their footsteps echoing in the warm spring air. Through the towering double doors, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the grand foyer. Ladies in designer gowns and men in tailored tuxedos mingled, their jewelry catching the light like stars. A cluster of women near the entrance paused their conversation to stare at Ethan and Lily. One whispered behind her champagne glass, and the others tittered in response. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept walking, his hand protectively on Lily's shoulder. Mr. Walker! Lily! Charlotte's voice rang out across the marble floor. She moved toward them with grace, her emerald evening gown flowing like water. Her warm smile seemed to light up the entire room. I'm so glad you could make it. Several heads turned at her enthusiastic greeting. Ethan couldn't help but notice how beautiful she looked. Her honey blonde hair elegantly swept up, revealing a graceful neck adorned with a simple pearl necklace. Thank you for having us, Miss Whitmore, Ethan said formally, very aware of the eyes on them. Please, it's Charlotte, she insisted, touching his arm lightly. Come, let me introduce you to some friends. She turned to Lily with a conspiratorial wink. And I hear there's a chocolate fountain in the reception room that you absolutely must try. Lily's eyes lit up, and some of the tension left Ethan's shoulders at Charlotte's easy manner. She guided them through the crowd, her hand still resting lightly on Ethan's arm. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my friends, Ethan and Lily Walker," Charlotte announced to a small group near the grand staircase. The word friends rolled off her tongue naturally, as if they'd known each other for years instead of days. A man in an impeccably tailored suit raised his eyebrows. "Walker? Don't believe I've heard the name before. What business are you in?" Ethan straightened his shoulders slightly. "I own Walker's Auto Repair on Mason Street." "Oh." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "How quaint." "Dad's the best mechanic in 3 counties," Lily spoke up proudly. "He can fix anything with an engine." Charlotte smoothly intercepted the man's response. "Actually, that's how we met. Ethan came to my rescue when my car broke down. He refused to accept payment for helping a neighbor in need," she added, her genuine admiration evident in her voice. A woman in a red dress joined the conversation. "How charitable of you, Mr. Walker. Though, surely you could have sent one of your employees." "I prefer to handle emergency calls myself," Ethan replied evenly. "Especially when someone might be stranded in an unsafe situation." Charlotte's eyes sparkled with interest. "That sense of responsibility, is that something you learned in the military?" The question caught Ethan off guard. He hadn't mentioned his service to her. "The medals on your suit," Charlotte explained, gesturing to the small pins on his lapel. "I recognize them because my late husband was very involved with veterans' causes." Several people in the group suddenly looked at Ethan with new interest. The man in the tailored suit leaned forward slightly. "You served?" "Yes, sir. 2 tours with the Army Rangers. Dad doesn't talk about it much," Lily added softly, pride and concern mixing in her voice. Charlotte touched Ethan's arm again, her eyes warm with genuine interest. "Would you mind sharing some of your experience with us? James here is on the board of the Veterans Support Foundation, and we're always looking for ways to better serve our military community." Ethan hesitated, looking around at the expectant faces. Usually, he kept those memories locked away, sharing them only with other veterans who understood. But something in Charlotte's gentle encouragement and sincere interest made him want to open up just a little. "Well," he began, his voice growing steadier as he continued, "I suppose it all started when I was about Lily's age, watching my own father serve." Ethan stood near one of the tall windows, a barely touched glass of sparkling water in his hand. The crystal chandelier above cast dancing lights across the polished marble floor, making him feel even more out of place. He watched as Charlotte moved gracefully through the crowd, greeting guests with practiced ease. "I simply must know," came a syrupy voice from behind him. "What exactly does one wear to work on cars?" A woman in an expensive black dress emphasized the last word like it was distasteful. Ethan turned, maintaining his composure. "Usually coveralls, ma'am. Keeps the grease off." "How practical," another guest chimed in, his bow tie probably worth more than Ethan's monthly rent. "And you actually choose to do this sort of work?" "Someone has to keep the cars running," Ethan replied evenly, though his jaw tightened slightly. A small cluster of guests had formed now, their jewelry catching the light as they exchanged knowing looks. Lily, who had been sampling appetizers nearby, moved closer to her father's side. "It must be quite a change," the first woman continued, sipping her champagne. "Being here instead of wherever it is you usually spend your evenings." "I imagine it's quite different from a military barracks," another man added with a smirk. "Or is it the garage where you sleep these days?" Lily's face flushed red. Before Ethan could stop her, she stepped forward, her voice clear and strong despite her trembling hands. "My dad doesn't sleep in the garage," she said, her chin raised high. "He's up before sunrise every morning in our home. The home he's kept for us even after Mom died, even when things were really tough." The group fell quiet, caught off guard by the teenager's fierce defense. Ethan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, but Lily wasn't finished. "You know what my dad did before he was a mechanic?" She looked each person in the eye. "He led rescue missions in Afghanistan. He has a silver star that he keeps in a drawer because he says the real medal was bringing his whole team home alive." More guests were turning to listen now. Charlotte had paused her rounds, watching intently from a few yards away. "And you know what he did when he came home and Mom got sick? He learned everything about car engines so he could start his own business. He wanted flexible hours to take care of me and take Mom to her treatments." Lily's voice cracked slightly, but she pressed on. He worked all day, then stayed up late teaching himself from books and videos. Sometimes his hands were so sore from learning new tools that he could barely hold his coffee cup, but he never complained. The woman in the black dress had the grace to look uncomfortable now. Ethan stood straight and tall behind his daughter, his eyes bright with emotion. When Mom died, he could have sent me to live with relatives while he figured things out. Lots of people suggested it. Lily's voice grew softer, but somehow stronger. Instead, he learned to braid hair by watching YouTube videos. He joined the PTA. He came to every school event, even if it meant working through the night to make up for lost time at the shop. She turned to the man who had made the barracks comment. My dad doesn't just fix cars. He fixes problems for people who have nowhere else to turn. Last month, he helped Mrs. Plainstado Rodriguez get her car running so she could keep her job. He let her pay in installments because she has 3 kids to feed. Charlotte had moved closer now, her expression a mixture of pride and something deeper, more personal. The other guests stood in awkward silence, their earlier mockery forgotten. So, yes, Lily concluded, her voice steady and clear. My dad works with his hands. He comes home with grease under his nails sometimes. But everything he does, every car he fixes, every early morning and late night, it's all been for me, for our family, for our community. She reached for her father's hand, and I couldn't be more proud to be his daughter. The silence that followed felt heavy with meaning. The crystal glasses had stopped clinking. The polite party chatter had ceased. Every eye was on the mechanic and his daughter, standing tall together in their modest but dignified clothes. Charlotte stepped forward, her blue evening gown rustling softly against the marble floor. Her eyes met Ethan's, and in that moment, something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, of the quiet strength it takes to rebuild a life from broken pieces. The admiration in her gaze was unmistakable, matched only by the pride that seemed to radiate from her entire being. The other guests began to drift away, some murmuring apologies, others simply looking thoughtful. But Charlotte remained, her presence like an anchor in the shifting social currents of the room. She had entered the evening seeing Ethan as someone worthy of gratitude and interest. Now, as she watched him embrace his brave, eloquent daughter, she saw so much more, a man of profound honor, sacrifice, and unshakable devotion to what truly mattered in life. The elegant French doors opened onto Charlotte's garden, letting the warm evening air mingle with the sounds of classical music from inside. Charlotte led Ethan and Lily down the stone pathway, her cream-colored evening gown catching the light from the garden lanterns. The sweet scent of jasmine filled the air, and fairy lights twinkled in the well-manicured hedges. I can't thank you both enough for coming tonight, Charlotte said, her smile genuine and warm. Especially you, Lily. What you said in there. She placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. That took real courage. Lily beamed, her cheeks flushing slightly. I just told the truth. Those people needed to know what kind of person Dad really is. Ethan cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. Lily's always been my strongest defender. Sometimes a little too strong. He gave his daughter a playful nudge. Oh, please. Lily rolled her eyes, but her smile remained. Someone has to speak up when you won't. Charlotte laughed, the sound clear and musical in the evening air. She's got you there, Ethan. They paused near a beautiful stone fountain, its water creating a peaceful backdrop to their conversation. Charlotte gestured to a nearby bench surrounded by blooming roses. Please sit. After all that standing around inside, I'm sure we could all use a break. Lily immediately plopped down, smoothing her navy blue dress. These shoes are killing me. How do you wear heels all the time, Charlotte? Years of practice and a very good chiropractor. Charlotte winked, settling beside her with far more grace. Ethan remained standing, hands in his pockets, looking more relaxed than he had all evening. Your garden is beautiful, he said, his eyes taking in the carefully tended flowers and shrubs. Must take a lot of work to maintain. Charlotte's expression softened. It was my husband Thomas's passion project. After he passed, I kept it up. It helps me feel close to him somehow. She ran her fingers along a rose petal. Though I must admit I have help. My thumbs aren't nearly as green as his were. Mom loved gardening too, Lily said quietly. We still have her flower boxes on the porch. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with understanding rather than awkwardness. Charlotte looked at father and daughter with genuine warmth, appreciating how they'd brought such authenticity to her usually formal world. You know, Charlotte said, breaking the peaceful moment. "I never did properly thank you for helping me with my car the other day, Ethan. Most people would have just driven past." Ethan shook his head. "No need for thanks. It was a simple fix." "Simple for you, maybe," Charlotte chuckled. "I wouldn't know a spark plug from from any other car part, if I'm being honest." Lily perked up. "Dad could teach you. He's the best teacher. He's been showing me how to change oil and fix basic stuff since I was 12. "Is that so?" Charlotte raised an eyebrow at Ethan, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Perhaps I should schedule some lessons at your shop?" Ethan's usual serious expression cracked into a genuine smile. "Well, I suppose we could start with car maintenance 101. Though I should warn you, Lily's a tough act to follow." "Hey," Lily protested, laughing. "I earned my A+ fair and square." Charlotte joined in their laughter, feeling more relaxed than she had all evening. Here, away from the scrutiny of her usual social circle, she could just be herself. No pretense, no carefully measured words. "You know what I love about cars?" Ethan said, surprising both Charlotte and Lily with his sudden openness. "They're honest. Either something works or it doesn't. No gray areas, no politics. Just straightforward problems with straightforward solutions." Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. "That must be refreshing. In my world, everything seems to come with strings attached. Like those fancy finger sandwiches inside," Lily quipped. "I'm pretty sure Mrs. Harrison Blake was counting how many each person took." "Lily!" Ethan tried to sound stern, but couldn't hide his amusement. Charlotte burst out laughing. "Oh, she absolutely was. And I guarantee she'll report back to the Ladies' Auxiliary Committee about who took more than their fair share." They all dissolved into laughter again, the kind that comes easily among friends. The garden seemed to embrace their joy, the flowers swaying gently in the evening breeze. "This is nice," Lily said, looking between her father and Charlotte. "Being out here, I mean. It's way better than being stuck inside with all those stuffy people." Charlotte smiled softly. "You know, Lily, you've made this evening far more memorable than any of my usual galas. Both of you have." She looked at Ethan, their eyes meeting for a moment. Ethan shifted his weight, but didn't look away. "You've made us feel welcome, Charlotte. That means a lot." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. The fountain bubbled peacefully, and somewhere in the distance, a nightbird called. Lily watched the exchange with barely concealed interest, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She opened her mouth to say something, but her words were cut short by the sharp click of heels on stone. Two imposing figures appeared at the garden entrance. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore Sr., Charlotte's in-laws, stood rigid and formal in their evening wear. Their expressions were as cold as the marble statues decorating the garden paths, and their eyes fixed on Ethan with unmistakable disapproval. The warm, comfortable atmosphere evaporated instantly. Charlotte's shoulders tensed, and Ethan instinctively straightened his posture. Lily scooted closer to her father, sensing the sudden shift in mood. The peaceful moment in the garden shattered as two stern figures emerged from the shadows. Margaret and Howard Whitmore, Charlotte's in-laws, stood like sentinels blocking the path. Margaret's designer dress sparkled with diamonds that matched the cold glitter in her eyes, while Howard adjusted his bow tie with manicured fingers. "Charlotte, dear," Margaret called out with artificial sweetness, "the Hendersons are asking for you inside. Something about their annual donation?" Charlotte hesitated, glancing at Ethan and Lily. "I should probably—" "Go ahead," Ethan assured her with a gentle smile. "We'll be fine." As Charlotte reluctantly headed back inside, Howard stepped forward, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel. "Mr. Walker, a word?" His tone made it clear it wasn't a request. Ethan turned to Lily. "Sweetheart, why don't you wait for me by that fountain? I won't be long." Lily's eyes darted between her father and the Whitmores, concern evident on her face. "Dad, it's okay," he assured her, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. Once Lily was out of earshot, Ethan faced the Whitmores, straightening his posture, the soldier in him responding to their confrontational stance. Margaret spoke first, her words sharp as cut glass. "Mr. Walker, while we appreciate your assistance with Charlotte's car trouble, you must understand that your presence here tonight is inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" Ethan kept his voice level, though his jaw tightened. Howard stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The Whitmore Foundation represents 3 generations of philanthropic work in this community. Our reputation, Charlotte's reputation, relies on maintaining certain standards. Standards? Ethan's question came out quiet, but firm. Margaret's lips curved into a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. Surely you can see how it looks. A wealthy widow suddenly appearing at social functions with a— She paused, examining him like a specimen under glass. A mechanic. People talk, Mr. Walker. Charlotte invited us to thank me for helping her, Ethan stated simply. Nothing more. Howard's laugh was short and harsh. Come now, we've seen how she looks at you. And your daughter's little speech? Very touching, but it doesn't change the facts. You don't belong in Charlotte's world. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides, but his military training helped him maintain his composure. With all due respect, I think that's for Charlotte to decide. Margaret's voice turned ice cold. Is it? The Foundation's board of directors might disagree. Charlotte's position as chairwoman depends on their confidence in her judgment. And if they were to lose that confidence— She left the threat hanging in the air. Are you threatening her position? Ethan's voice grew dangerously quiet. We're protecting her, Howard corrected, and the foundation that my son built before his death. Charlotte may be a widow, but she's still a Whitmore. She has responsibilities, obligations to this community that go far beyond her personal interests. Margaret stepped forward, her diamond necklace catching the garden lights. The Foundation provides crucial support to veterans programs, children's hospitals, scholarship funds. Would you really risk all that good work just to pursue some romantic notion? The words hit Ethan like physical blows. He thought of all the veterans he knew who depended on those programs, the families helped by the Foundation's work. The weight of it pressed down on his shoulders, heavier than any pack he'd carried in combat. We've done our research on you, Mr. Walker, Howard continued. Honorable service record. Clean business practices admirable, truly. But you must see that pursuing any kind of relationship with Charlotte would only harm her. And the Foundation's work— Ethan's mind flashed to Charlotte's warm smile, the way she'd defended him to her friends, how naturally she'd connected with Lily. But now those memories were tainted by the thought of her losing everything she'd worked for, of charitable programs being shut down, of her reputation being destroyed all because of him. The choice is yours, of course, Margaret added with false kindness. But ask yourself, what would a man of honor do? They knew exactly which buttons to push. Ethan's sense of duty, his desire to protect others, his unwillingness to cause harm, they weaponized it all against him. He looked across the garden to where Lily waited by the fountain, then toward the house where he could see Charlotte through a window, talking with guests. She was in her element there, elegant and purposeful, making a real difference in people's lives. The Whitmores watched him process their words, their expressions confident in their victory. They'd done this before, he realized, pushed away anyone they deemed unworthy of their family name. I understand, Ethan said finally, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. Each word felt like gravel in his throat. You've made your point. Excellent, Howard nodded, satisfied. I trust you'll make the right decision. We knew you'd be reasonable, Margaret added, her smile now triumphant. You can see yourself out through the side gate. No need to make a scene by going back inside. Ethan walked to Lily, his steps heavy. She took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. Dad, what happened? We need to go, sweetheart, he managed, trying to keep his voice steady. But what about saying goodbye to Charlotte? Lily protested, looking back toward the house. Not tonight, Ethan said firmly, guiding her toward the garden gate. Every step away from the house felt like a betrayal, but he forced himself to keep walking. He could feel the Whitmore's eyes on his back, watching to make sure he left. As they reached their old truck parked among the luxury vehicles, Lily turned to him. Dad, those people were mean to you, weren't they? Like the ones at my school who think they're better than everyone else? Ethan helped her into the truck, buying time before answering. Sometimes doing the right thing means walking away, even when it hurts, he said, finally closing her door. As he walked around to the driver's side, he caught one last glimpse of Charlotte through the mansion's windows. She was searching the garden, probably wondering where they'd gone. The sight made his chest ache, but he forced himself to look away. Starting the truck, he drove away from the mansion, leaving behind not just Charlotte, but the brief, beautiful dream of what might have been. The old pickup truck rumbled down the quiet streets, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Ethan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched tight. Next to him, Lily sat in her pretty dress, confusion written across her young face. The drive home felt longer than usual, heavy with unspoken words. When they finally pulled into their modest driveway, the porch light cast a warm glow that usually felt welcoming. Tonight, it only highlighted how different their world was from the glittering mansion they'd just left. Inside their small living room, Lily kicked off her shoes and curled up on their worn but comfortable couch. "Dad, why did we leave so suddenly? I thought things were going well." Charlotte seemed to really like us. Ethan loosened his tie, avoiding his daughter's questioning eyes. "Sometimes," he started, then paused to hang up his jacket carefully, the only good suit he owned. "Sometimes we have to accept that people come from different worlds, sweetheart." "But that's what made it special," Lily protested, sitting up straighter. "Did you see how Charlotte stood up for us when those snobby ladies were whispering? She's different from them." The faith in his daughter's voice made his chest ache. Ethan sat heavily in his old recliner, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated, Lily Pad. Charlotte's world. It has rules we don't understand. Expectations. That's stupid," Lily declared with teenage certainty. "You always tell me what matters is who people are inside, not what they have." A small smile touched Ethan's lips despite his heavy heart. "And that's true, but sometimes being a grown-up means making hard choices to protect people He caught himself. "To protect people who've been kind to us." His phone buzzed in his pocket. Charlotte's name lit up the screen, making his stomach twist. He turned the phone face down on the side table, trying to ignore how his hand wanted to shake. "She's calling you, isn't she?" Lily's voice was quiet now, understanding beyond her years. "Dad, you like her. I can tell." "Lily." Ethan's voice held a warning note. "And she likes you too. I saw how she looked at you in the garden, like Mom used to look at you in those old photos." The mention of her mother made Ethan's throat tight. He got up, needing to move. "That's enough, Lily. It's late, and you have school tomorrow." "But Dad." "Bed, please." His voice was firm but gentle. "We can talk more another time." Lily stood, her dress rustling. She crossed to him and wrapped her arms around his waist in a fierce hug. "You deserve to be happy, Dad. Mom would want that." Ethan held his daughter close, kissing the top of her head. "I am happy. I have you." After Lily disappeared upstairs, Ethan sat alone in the quiet living room. His phone buzzed again, another call from Charlotte. He picked it up, his thumb hovering over the answer button. The Whitmore's words echoed in his mind. "You'll destroy everything she's worked for. Her reputation, the charity's credibility. All of it will crumble if she's associated with someone like you." He let the call go to voicemail. In the kitchen, he poured himself a glass of water, trying to wash away the bitter taste of the evening's end. The dishes from breakfast still sat in the sink, evidence of their normal, simple life. A life that had felt plenty good enough until tonight, when he glimpsed something more. His phone buzzed with a text message. "Ethan, please call me. I don't understand what happened. Charlotte." He could almost hear her voice, elegant but warm, like everything about her. Another text followed. "Whatever my in-laws said, it doesn't matter. Please let me explain." Ethan set his glass down harder than he meant to. Of course she knew. She probably dealt with their interference all the time, but this was different. He couldn't be the reason her whole life fell apart. He typed out a response, deleted it, typed again. Finally, "Thank you for a lovely evening. Please don't worry about us. Take care of yourself." He hit send before he could change his mind, then turned his phone off completely. Across town, in her expansive bedroom with its designer furnishings, Charlotte stared at Ethan's message. The formal tone felt like a wall going up, so different from the man who'd laughed with her in the garden just hours ago. She sat on the edge of her king-sized bed, suddenly aware of how empty the space felt. The room was perfect. Everything matched. Everything carefully chosen. But it lacked the warmth she'd felt in just a few minutes of watching Ethan with his daughter. Her fingers traced over his message again. Such simple words, but she could feel the weight behind them. No false flattery, no hidden agenda, just honest words from an honest man, the kind of man who'd fix a stranger's car and refuse payment because it's what neighbors do. Charlotte thought of the society people who'd filled her home tonight, How many of them would have stopped to help her on that road? How many would have raised a daughter as genuine and brave as Lily? Her phone felt heavy in her hand as another call went unanswered. The silence of her perfect room pressed in around her, and for the first time in years, Charlotte realized just how lonely she'd been since losing her husband. Not because she missed him specifically, their marriage had been more partnership than passion, but because she missed having someone real in her life, someone who saw her as more than a wealthy widow to be managed. She'd seen that in Ethan's eyes tonight, before whatever her in-laws had said changed everything. He'd looked at her like she was just Charlotte, not Mrs. Jonathan Whitmore, not the charity foundation director. Just a woman he enjoyed talking to. Setting her phone on the nightstand, Charlotte caught her reflection in the ornate mirror. She looked polished, elegant, exactly as everyone expected. But tonight, for a few precious hours, she'd felt authentic, real, alive. She picked up her phone one more time, reading Ethan's message again. No pretense, no games, just honest words from an honest man. And somehow, that mattered more than all the sophisticated compliments she'd received tonight. The morning sun beat down on Walker's Auto Shop, warming the weathered metal sign that had hung there for over a decade. Ethan was already elbow-deep in an old Chevy's engine when he heard the distinct crunch of tires on gravel. He didn't look up, assuming it was just another customer dropping off their car. "Good morning, Ethan." The familiar voice made him freeze. Charlotte Whitmore stood at the garage entrance, holding 2 coffee cups from the fancy cafe downtown. She looked different from the gala, more casual in a simple blouse and jeans, though they probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. Her presence felt out of place among the oil stains and rusty tools. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said stiffly, wiping his hands on a rag. "You shouldn't be here." "Please, it's Charlotte." She stepped into the garage, her shoes clicking against the concrete floor. "And I brought coffee. Black for you, if I remember correctly?" Ethan sighed, glancing at the office where his elderly receptionist, Martha, was watching with undisguised curiosity. "Look, I appreciate the gesture, but after last night..." "After last night I realized something," Charlotte interrupted, setting the coffees down on his workbench. "I've spent the last 3 years living by other people's rules. My in-laws, the society crowd, everyone telling me what a proper widow should do." She squared her shoulders. "I'm done with that." "It's not that simple," Ethan said, though his resolve was wavering at the determination in her eyes. "Your in-laws made it pretty clear. They don't own me," Charlotte said firmly, "or my late husband's foundation. I'm the one who decides who I spend time with." A truck pulled up outside, and Ethan nodded to the driver waiting. "I've got customers, then I'll wait." Charlotte settled onto a worn chair near his workbench, smoothing her jeans as if it were a throne. "I'd like to see how a real mechanic works if you don't mind." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of grease he didn't notice. "You're really not going to leave, are you? Not until you stop trying to protect me from imaginary consequences." She took a sip of her coffee, eyes twinkling. "Besides, I never got to properly thank you for defending me on the road the other day." "I didn't defend you. I just fixed your car. You showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. That's rare in my world." Charlotte's voice softened. "And then I saw how you are with Lily at the gala. The way she looks at you. That kind of respect has to be earned." The customer from the truck approached, keys in hand. Ethan hesitated, then grabbed the coffee Charlotte had brought him. "Fine, you can stay. But don't say I didn't warn you. It gets pretty messy in here." "I think I can handle a little dirt," Charlotte said with a smile. For the next hour, Charlotte watched as Ethan worked. His movements were precise and confident, each tool selected with purpose. He explained things to his customers in simple terms, never talking down to them or trying to oversell services they didn't need. Several times, he even showed them the worn parts he was replacing, making sure they understood exactly what they were paying for. Between customers, he found himself answering Charlotte's questions about different tools and procedures. Her genuine interest surprised him. She wasn't just making polite conversation. She actually wanted to learn. "So that's why my car was making that weird noise," she said, peering at the timing belt he was replacing on a minivan. "I always thought cars were just mysterious machines that either worked or didn't." "Everything has a reason," Ethan replied, adjusting his wrench. "Most problems start small. Ignore them too long, and that's when you end up stranded on the side of the road." Like relationships? Charlotte asked quietly. Ethan's hand slipped, and he barely caught the wrench before it fell. Charlotte, I know what you're going to say, she said, standing up and brushing off her jeans. That we're from different worlds, that it would never work, that you're trying to protect me from scandal or gossip. She stepped closer, her perfume, a stark contrast to the garage's usual sense of oil and metal. But I'm not asking for anything except a chance to get to know you better. No pressure, no expectations. Ethan straightened up, suddenly very aware of the grease on his hands and the worn state of his work clothes. Your in-laws are not in charge of my life, Charlotte finished firmly. I respect what they've done for the foundation, but I'm done letting them control my personal choices. She picked up her empty coffee cup. So, what do you say? Can I come back tomorrow? The sensible answer was no. He should stick to his decision to keep his distance. But looking at Charlotte, really looking at her, he saw something he recognized. The same loneliness he'd been carrying since losing his wife. The same desire for genuine connection in a world that often felt superficial. Martha chose that moment to poke her head out of the office. Ethan, dear, your next appointment's here. I'll be right there, he called back. He turned to Charlotte, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, if you really want to see how a garage works. I do, she said quickly. Then I guess I can't stop you from coming around. He tried to sound reluctant, but a small smile tugged at his lips. Just don't blame me when those fancy clothes get ruined. Charlotte's face lit up with genuine joy. I'll bring coffee again tomorrow, and maybe some of those muffins from the cafe. I noticed you didn't eat lunch today. You don't have to. I want to, she said simply. See you tomorrow, Ethan. As she walked out into the sunlight, Ethan found himself watching her go. Martha appeared at his elbow, clicking her tongue disapprovingly. That woman's going to be trouble, she said, but her eyes were kind. And maybe that's exactly what you need. Ethan shook his head and turned back to the minivan's engine. But for the first time in years, the familiar routine of his work was accompanied by something new. A warm flutter of anticipation for tomorrow. The morning sun beat down on Walker's Auto Shop, warming the weathered metal sign that had hung there for over a decade. Ethan was already elbow-deep in an old Chevy's engine when he heard the distinct crunch of tires on gravel. He didn't look up, assuming it was just another customer dropping off their car. Good morning, Ethan. The familiar voice made him freeze. Charlotte Whitmore stood there in a simple blouse and jeans, a far cry from her elegant gala attire, holding 2 cups of coffee from the local diner. Her pearl earrings caught the sunlight as she smiled hesitantly. Mrs. Whitmore, Ethan said stiffly, wiping his hands on a rag. This isn't really a place for... Please, it's Charlotte, she interrupted, extending one of the coffee cups. And I think I'll decide where I belong, if you don't mind. Ethan accepted the coffee reluctantly, noting how she'd remembered his preference for it black. Look, about last night. I don't care what they think, Charlotte said firmly. I'm not here because I feel obligated. I'm here because I want to be. Before Ethan could respond, Lily burst through the shop's side door, her school backpack slung over one shoulder. Her face lit up when she saw Charlotte. You came! Lily exclaimed, rushing over. Dad, you didn't tell me Charlotte was visiting. That's because I didn't know, Ethan muttered. But his daughter's enthusiasm was hard to resist. Charlotte pulled a paper bag from her purse. I brought some of those pastries from the gala, the ones you said you liked, Lily. As the morning wore on, Charlotte proved surprisingly willing to get her hands dirty. She organized tools, handed Ethan wrenches when asked, and seemed genuinely interested in learning about the work. Her designer watch was carefully tucked away, replaced by a borrowed work apron that had seen better days. Mind if I stay and watch you work? Charlotte asked, perching on a worn stool. I've always wondered what goes on under the hood. Ethan found himself explaining basic engine components as he worked, surprised by her thoughtful questions. When Lily joined them after finishing her homework, Charlotte watched in fascination as Ethan guided his daughter through changing the oil on an old Ford pickup they'd been restoring. Remember to double-check the drain plugs tight, Ethan instructed, watching Lily's careful movements. We don't want any leaks. I know, Dad, Lily replied with playful exasperation. This isn't my first oil change. Charlotte smiled at their exchange. How long have you been teaching her? Since she could hold a wrench, Ethan said proudly. Figure everyone should know how to take care of their own vehicle. My late husband never let me near our cars, Charlotte admitted. Said that's what mechanics were for. Well, Ethan said, handing her a wrench. Want to learn something new today? For the next hour, he showed Charlotte how to check fluid levels and change an air filter. She listened intently, asking questions and making notes on her phone. Her genuine interest touched something in Ethan he tried hard to ignore. Around noon, Lily's stomach growled loudly, making them all laugh. How about lunch? Charlotte suggested. My treat? At May's Diner? Ethan started to decline, but Lily jumped in. Dad, please. May makes the best burgers in town. I have work to finish, he began. The cars will still be here when you get back, Charlotte said gently. Sometimes it's okay to take a break. At the diner, they squeezed into a worn vinyl booth. May herself came to take their order, raising an eyebrow at Charlotte's presence but saying nothing. Soon the table was loaded with classic diner fare. Burgers, fries, and thick milkshakes. Charlotte watched in amusement as Lily demonstrated her preferred method of dipping fries in her chocolate shake. You know, I used to do the same thing when I was your age. My mother was horrified. See, Dad? It's not just me. Lily grinned, dunking another fry. The conversation flowed easily, mostly between Charlotte and Lily. They discovered shared interests in photography and classic movies. Charlotte promised to show Lily her collection of vintage cameras sometime, while Ethan quietly ate his burger, watching them interact. He couldn't help noticing how naturally they got along, how Charlotte listened to Lily with genuine interest, not the condescending attention some adults showed teenagers. When Lily talked about her dream of becoming a mechanical engineer, Charlotte's eyes lit up. My foundation offers scholarships for women in STEM fields, she mentioned. I'd love to tell you more about it sometime. Lily beamed, and Ethan felt that familiar twist in his gut, a mix of gratitude for Charlotte's kindness and worry about getting too close to her world. The memory of her in-laws' warning still stung. But watching them share a laugh over Lily's stories about his most unusual car repair cases, Ethan couldn't deny the warmth that filled the diner booth. Charlotte fit here somehow, in this simple setting with its coffee-stained menus and checkered floor tiles. She looked more relaxed than she had at her elegant gala, her guard down, her smile reaching her eyes. May brought the check, which Charlotte smoothly picked up before Ethan could reach for it. When he started to protest, she fixed him with a look that brooked no argument. You've been teaching me all morning, she said firmly. This is the least I can do. Lily and Charlotte continued chatting as they walked back to the shop, their laughter echoing in the quiet street. Ethan trailed slightly behind, watching them. His daughter hadn't connected with anyone like this since her mother passed, and seeing her so animated made his heart ache in ways he wasn't ready to examine. Back at the shop, Charlotte helped Lily gather her school things, while Ethan returned to the Chevy he'd been working on that morning. He could hear them making plans to visit the town's small photography exhibition next weekend, their voices mixing with the familiar sounds of the garage. The afternoon sun streamed through the open garage doors of Walker's Auto Shop, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Charlotte had rolled up her sleeves, determined to be useful despite her unfamiliarity with tools and engines. She'd spent the last hour organizing the front desk's paperwork. Something she noticed needed attention. Hand me that wrench, would you, Lily? Ethan's voice echoed from beneath an old blue pickup truck. His legs stuck out from underneath, boots crossed at the ankles. Lily, who sat cross-legged next to the truck, reached for the toolbox. The 3/8? Or the 1/2-inch? The 3/8. Remember how we can tell the difference? Charlotte watched from her spot by the desk as Lily picked up two similar-looking wrenches, studying them carefully. The teenager's face lit up with recognition. The 3/8 is smaller, and it has the tiny mark right here. That's my girl. Pride filled Ethan's voice. He slid out from under the truck, grease streaked across his forearm. Now, want to learn how to change out this oil pan gasket? Lily nodded eagerly, scooting closer to her father. Charlotte couldn't help but smile at their easy rapport. There was something beautiful about the way Ethan taught his daughter, patient and encouraging, never making her feel small for not knowing something. See this part here? Ethan pointed to something under the truck. That's where we're losing oil. A good mechanic always starts with the simplest explanation first. Like when my science teacher talks about Occam's razor? Lily asked. Ethan chuckled. Exactly like that. Though I didn't know you were studying philosophy in science class. Charlotte moved closer, curious despite herself. Ethan glanced up, meeting her eyes briefly before returning his attention to Lily. "Want to join the lesson, Ms. Whitmore?" "Charlotte," she corrected gently. "And yes, I would. Though I warn you, I know absolutely nothing about cars except how to fill them with gas." Lily giggled. "That's okay. Dad says everyone starts somewhere." For the next hour, Charlotte found herself drawn into their world. Ethan explained each step clearly, his deep voice steady and sure. He showed them how to remove the old gasket, clean the surface properly, and prepare the new one. His hands, strong and capable, demonstrated each motion with precision. "The trick is," he said, guiding Lily's hands, "to be thorough but gentle. Too much force, and you'll damage something. Not enough, and it won't seal properly." Charlotte noticed how he applied this philosophy to everything: his work, his teaching, his relationship with Lily. There was a quiet wisdom in his approach that touched her deeply. The shop phone rang, and Charlotte jumped up. "I'll get it!" She'd been answering calls all morning, surprising herself with how quickly she'd picked up the scheduling system. While she handled the call, Ethan and Lily continued working. Their voices drifted over, punctuated by occasional laughter and the metallic clink of tools. "Dad, remember when we tried to fix Mom's old sewing machine?" Lily's voice was warm with memory. "And somehow made it worse? How could I forget?" Ethan's response was gentle, touched with both humor and sadness. "Your mom just laughed and said at least we tried." Charlotte's heart squeezed at the tender moment. She busied herself with the paperwork, giving them privacy. Around noon, the rumble of stomachs couldn't be ignored anymore. Lily wiped her hands on a shop rag and announced, "I'm starving." "Me too," Charlotte admitted. "What's good around here?" "Rose's Diner," father and daughter said in unison. "Best burgers in 3 counties, Lily added. "And Miss Rose makes her pies fresh every morning." Ethan hesitated, but Charlotte was already reaching for her purse. "My treat, as a thank you for the mechanical education." "You don't have to," Ethan started. "I want to," Charlotte interrupted firmly. "Besides, I've been curious about these famous burgers." The diner was a short walk away, a cheerful building with red checkered curtains and a bell that jingled when they entered. The lunch crowd was starting to filter in, but they found a booth by the window. "Charlotte, you have to try the strawberry shake," Lily insisted, sliding into the vinyl seat. "Miss Rose uses real strawberries." "Then I absolutely must," Charlotte smiled, settling across from Lily while Ethan sat next to his daughter. Rose herself came to take their order, her gray hair tucked under a neat cap. She greeted Ethan and Lily warmly, then gave Charlotte a friendly wink. "Nice to see some new faces around here." As they waited for their food, Lily regaled Charlotte with stories about the shop and growing up around cars. Her eyes sparkled as she described her first successful oil change, her father's patient teaching, and the satisfaction of fixing something with her own hands. "And then," Lily said, barely containing her laughter, "Dad got sprayed right in the face with windshield washer fluid?" Charlotte burst out laughing, picturing dignified Ethan dripping with blue liquid. To her delight, Ethan joined in, his deep chuckle mixing with their giggles. "In my defense," he said, "that car had a very unusual reservoir design." Their food arrived: huge, juicy burgers with crispy fries and tall glasses of strawberry shake. Charlotte took a sip and her eyes widened. "Lily, you were right. This is amazing." They fell into easy conversation, sharing fries and stories. Charlotte told them about her disaster attempts at cooking, making Lily laugh so hard she nearly snorted shake through her nose. The afternoon light streamed through the window, catching the shine in Lily's hair, so like her father's. Ethan watched them quietly, something unreadable in his expression. When Charlotte caught his eye, he quickly looked down at his plate, but not before she saw the conflict there, a mixture of joy and hesitation, hope and fear. As they finished their meal, Charlotte noticed how natural it felt, sitting here with them, sharing jokes and simple food in this small-town diner. It was so different from the formal dinners and charity galas that had filled her life for so long. Here, there were no pretenses, no carefully measured words or hidden agendas, just honest laughter and genuine connection. Lily was in the middle of explaining her science project to Charlotte, who listened with genuine interest, when Rose brought over a slice of fresh apple pie, on the house. They shared it between the 3 of them, and Charlotte couldn't remember the last time food had tasted so good or company had felt so warm. Red, white, and blue bunting decorated Main Street as the autumn breeze carried the scent of barbecue and cotton candy through the air. The annual Veterans Day celebration had transformed the small southern town center into a festive gathering place, with families milling about between food stands and carnival games. Ethan Walker stood at the edge of the crowd, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his dress pants. He wore his old military uniform, pressed and fitted despite years of storage. The medals on his chest caught the afternoon sunlight. Beside him, Lily beamed with pride, wearing a pretty blue dress she'd chosen, specially for the occasion. "Dad, you look so handsome," Lily said, straightening his collar for the third time. "I wish you'd wear your uniform more often." Ethan gave a small shake of his head. "Once a year is plenty, sweetheart." His eyes scanned the growing crowd, trying not to search for a particular face he hadn't seen in days. The town square had been set up with rows of folding chairs facing a small stage. Local politicians and veteran organization leaders gathered near the podium, checking their prepared speeches. The high school band warmed up off to the side, brass instruments glinting in the sun. "Mr. Walker," called out Tommy Jenkins, one of Ethan's regular customers, approaching with his family. "Good to see you here this year. Usually have to drag you out to these things." Ethan managed a small smile. "Lily insisted," he said, giving his daughter's shoulder a gentle squeeze. More townspeople began to gather around them. Many knew Ethan from his auto shop, but today they looked at him differently, noting the impressive array of medals with newfound respect. He'd never been one to talk about his service, preferring to focus on the present rather than the past. The master of ceremonies took the stage, tapping the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll please take your seats, we're about to begin our annual Veterans Day celebration." Lily tugged at her father's sleeve, pointing to 2 empty chairs in the middle row. "Let's sit there, Dad." As they made their way to their seats, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Ethan's heart skipped a beat when he saw Charlotte Whitmore step out, elegant as always in a navy blue dress. Several people turned to stare. It wasn't often that someone from her social circle attended small-town events like this. "Charlotte!" Lily called out, waving enthusiastically. Charlotte smiled warmly and walked over to them, seemingly unbothered by the curious glances from townspeople. "Hello, Lily." "Ethan." Her eyes lingered on his uniform, taking in the sight of him. "You look very distinguished." Ethan felt his neck grow warm. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said softly. "I wouldn't miss it," she replied, her voice equally quiet. "May I join you?" Before Ethan could respond, Lily was already making space between them. The three sat together as the ceremony began, with the mayor giving his usual speech about sacrifice and service. The high school band played a medley of patriotic songs, and various veterans were called up to be recognized. When Ethan's name was announced, he reluctantly made his way to the stage, standing at attention as his service record was read aloud. "Staff Sergeant Ethan Walker," the mayor announced. "Decorated combat veteran who served 3 tours overseas, recipient of the Bronze Star Medal for valor in combat." Ethan kept his eyes fixed on the horizon, the way he'd been trained, but he could feel Charlotte and Lily's proud gazes from the audience. As he returned to his seat, Charlotte squeezed his hand briefly, a gesture that sent warmth through his entire body. Then, to everyone's surprise, Charlotte stood up and made her way to the stage. The mayor looked confused but handed her the microphone when she requested it. A hush fell over the crowd. "I hope you'll forgive me for speaking without being on the program," she began, her voice clear and strong. "But today, I feel compelled to share something about honor and service that I've learned recently." She turned slightly, finding Ethan in the crowd. "We often think of heroes as larger than life, as distant figures in history books. But true heroes walk among us every day, quietly serving their communities long after they've hung up their uniforms." Charlotte's voice grew more passionate as she continued. "I've had the privilege of getting to know one such hero, a man who not only served his country with distinction but continues to serve his community with humility and integrity. A man who teaches his daughter the value of hard work and honesty. A man who stops to help strangers on the road, expecting nothing in return." Ethan felt dozens of eyes turn toward him, but he couldn't look away from Charlotte. Her words wrapped around him like a warm embrace. "The medals on his chest tell only part of his story," she said, gesturing toward Ethan. "The true measure of his character is in the way he lives each day, with unwavering honor, quiet strength, and genuine kindness. That's what real heroism looks like." Tears glistened in Lily's eyes as she gripped her father's hand. Around them, heads nodded in agreement, and several people reached out to pat Ethan's shoulder. So today, as we honor all our veterans, I want to especially thank Staff Sergeant Ethan Walker, Charlotte's voice softened with emotion, for showing us that service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. It lives on in the everyday choices we make to help others, to lead by example, and to make our community stronger. The crowd erupted in applause. Someone shouted, "Hear, hear!" and others joined in with whistles and cheers. Ethan felt his chest tighten with emotion as he watched Charlotte return to her seat, her eyes never leaving his. The mayor returned to the podium, clearly moved. "Well, I don't think we could have said it better ourselves. Thank you, Ms. Whitmore, for those beautiful words." As the ceremony continued, Ethan sat straight in his chair, overwhelmed by the moment. He'd never sought recognition for his service or his daily life. But hearing Charlotte speak about him with such understanding and respect made him feel truly seen for perhaps the first time since returning from war. Lily leaned against his shoulder, whispering, "She's right about you, Dad. You're my hero, too." The autumn sun warmed their faces as the band struck up another patriotic tune. Ethan glanced at Charlotte, who sat with quiet dignity beside them, and felt something shift in his heart. The wall he'd built between them began to crumble, brick by brick, replaced by something stronger: hope. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across Main Street as Charlotte and Ethan left the celebration behind them. The sounds of laughter and music gradually faded into a comfortable quiet, broken only by their footsteps on the sidewalk and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Charlotte walked close to Ethan, her heels clicking softly against the concrete. She'd changed from her usual elegant attire into something more casual, a simple sweater and jeans that seemed to match the authenticity of the moment. Ethan had loosened his tie, but still wore his uniform with the natural dignity of someone who understood its true meaning. "Thank you for coming today," Ethan said finally, breaking the silence. "You didn't have to do that. Make that speech, I mean." Charlotte shook her head, her blonde hair catching the golden light. "Every word was true, Ethan. You know, when my husband died, everyone kept telling me how brave he was in business, how many deals he closed, how much wealth he created." She paused, wrapping her arms around herself against the cooling air. "But that's not really bravery, is it?" Ethan glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "Your husband seemed like a good man, from what I've heard." "He was," Charlotte nodded. "But watching you today, seeing how you carry yourself, how you've raised Lily alone, that's real courage. Not just during your service, but every single day since." They passed the town's small park, where an American flag still fluttered at half-mast. Ethan stopped for a moment, his eyes distant. "You know what I remember most about serving? Not the big moments. It's the quiet ones. Watching my buddies write letters home, sharing a candy bar someone's mom sent, just being there for each other." Charlotte listened intently, noting how his voice grew softer when he spoke of those memories. "Is that why you stayed in this town? The sense of community?" "Partly," Ethan admitted. "After Sarah died, I thought about moving, starting fresh somewhere else. But Lily was so young, and this place, these people became our family." They brought casseroles for weeks. Mrs. Henderson from the diner watched Lily when I had late shifts. No questions asked, no favors expected. They turned down a tree-lined street, their pace slowing naturally, as if neither wanted the walk to end. Charlotte's hand brushed against Ethan's briefly, and neither pulled away. "I understand loss," Charlotte said softly. "But sometimes I think I've forgotten how to live with it. In my world, everything's about appearances, maintaining the right image. Even grief has to look proper." She let out a small, bitter laugh. "Do you know this is the first time in 3 years I've worn jeans in public?" Ethan smiled slightly. "They suit you. You look real." "Real," Charlotte repeated, tasting the word. "That's what I feel when I'm with you and Lily. Real. Not Mrs. Jonathan Whitmore, the widow. Not the foundation director. Just Charlotte." They paused at a corner where an old streetlight buzzed to life in the deepening dusk. Ethan turned to face her, his military medals catching the warm glow. "You know, honor isn't about medals or speeches," he said. "It's about being true to yourself even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Charlotte reached up and touched one of his medals gently, like refusing a tip from a stranded motorist. That was just being neighborly, Ethan said, but his eyes crinkled at the corners. You've taught me so much about honor, Ethan, Charlotte said, her voice barely above a whisper. About what really matters. I spent years surrounded by wealth, thinking that was security, but watching you with Lily, seeing how you live, that's true richness. The streetlight cast a soft halo around them as Charlotte stepped closer. Ethan could smell her subtle perfume, something light and fresh that reminded him of spring mornings. His heart beat faster, but he stood steady, years of military discipline keeping him still. You know, Charlotte continued, Jonathan used to say that hope was just another word for a business opportunity. She shook her head. But I think hope is this: standing here, being real, feeling like maybe the world isn't as divided as everyone wants us to believe. Ethan's voice was rough with emotion when he spoke. Sarah used to say something similar. She'd tell Lily that hope is like the stars. Sometimes you can't see them, but they're always there. Charlotte's eyes glistened in the lamplight. She sounds like she was very wise. She was, Ethan agreed. And she'd have liked you. No pretense, just heart. The evening had fully settled around them now, the air cool and sweet with the scent of autumn. Charlotte stepped even closer, her face tilted up to his. Without her usual heels, she had to rise slightly on her toes to reach him. Her lips pressed softly against his cheek, warm and gentle. When she pulled back, Ethan's usual serious expression had softened into a rare, genuine smile that reached all the way to his eyes. The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Ethan pulled into the empty parking lot of Walker's auto shop. His breath made little clouds in the cold air as he unlocked the front door, flipping on the lights that buzzed to life overhead. The familiar smell of oil and metal usually brought him comfort, but today, something felt off. A stack of mail sat waiting on his desk, dropped through the slot over the weekend. Bills, advertisements, and then his hands froze on a thick manila envelope with an official legal seal. His heart sank as he read the heading, Notice of Foreclosure. Ethan sank into his worn office chair, the leather creaking under his weight. The words blurred together as he scanned the document, but the message was clear enough. After years of barely staying afloat, giving Lily everything she needed, covering medical bills from his war injury, and trying to keep his rates affordable for his neighbors, it had all finally caught up with him. The bank wanted their money, and they wanted it soon. The sound of tires on gravel made him quickly stuff the papers into his desk drawer. Through the window, he saw Lily pulling up in her old Honda, the one they'd fixed together last summer. She had started coming in early to help before school, learning the trade just like he'd learned from his own father. "Morning, Dad," Lily called out cheerfully, dropping her backpack by the door. "I brought you coffee." She set a steaming travel mug on his desk, her smile bright and innocent. Ethan forced himself to smile back. "Thanks, sweetheart. You're getting to be as thoughtful as your mom was." "Are you okay?" Lily's expression turned concerned. "You look kind of pale." "Just tired," Ethan lied, hating himself for it. Big day ahead. Mrs. Peterson's Buick needs a new transmission. Before Lily could press further, the shop phone rang. Ethan grabbed it quickly, grateful for the distraction. Walker's Auto Shop. "Good morning, stranger." Charlotte's warm voice filled the line, making his stomach twist with guilt. "I was thinking about stopping by later with lunch. That little diner you showed me does amazing takeout." Ethan glanced at the drawer, holding the foreclosure notice. That's really nice of you, Charlotte, but I'm swamped today. Probably won't even take a lunch break." "Oh," he could hear the disappointment in her voice. "Well, maybe dinner then?" Lily mentioned wanting to try that new recipe. "Listen," Ethan cut in, perhaps too sharply. "I've got customers waiting. Can we talk later?" A pause. "Of course. Take care, Ethan." He hung up and caught Lily staring at him. "Dad, what's going on? Why are you being weird with Charlotte?" "I'm not being weird," Ethan said, standing up. "Come on, let's get that Buick started before you're late for school." Throughout the morning, Ethan worked mechanically, his mind churning with numbers. The shop's savings account was nearly empty. He'd already refinanced years ago when Lily needed braces. His military pension barely covered their home payments. The few valuable things he owned, his tools, his truck, wouldn't come close to what he needed. Around noon, Charlotte's sleek car pulled into the lot despite his earlier excuse. His hands tightened on the wrench he was holding as she approached, looking beautiful in a casual blue dress. "I know you said you were busy," she said, holding up a paper bag that smelled amazing. "But everyone needs to eat, Charlotte." Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, trying to hide his discomfort. "You really didn't have to." "I wanted to." She set the bag down on a workbench. "And I wanted to make sure you're all right. You seemed different on the phone this morning." Before Ethan could respond, a black luxury SUV pulled up outside. Through the windshield, he recognized Charlotte's brother-in-law, Richard Whitmore, looking smugly satisfied. The man's expensive shoes clicked on the concrete as he approached, holding a folder of his own. "Well, well," Richard said, looking around the shop with obvious disdain. "So this is where our Charlotte's been spending so much time lately." Charlotte's spine straightened. "Richard, what are you doing here? Looking out for family interests, dear." He turned to Ethan. "Imagine my surprise when I had lunch with Frank down at the bank today. He mentioned that this establishment was headed for foreclosure. Quite a bit of debt, apparently." Ethan's jaw clenched as Charlotte turned to him, shock written across her face. "Ethan, is that true?" "It's not your concern," Ethan said quietly. "Oh, but it is her concern," Richard pressed, clearly enjoying himself. "When a man of your position suddenly takes an interest in a wealthy widow, people notice. They ask questions. They wonder about motivations." "That's enough," Charlotte snapped, but Richard continued. "The timing is rather convenient, isn't it? Financial troubles, and suddenly you're cozying up to someone who could easily solve all your problems with a single check." Ethan's face burned with anger and shame. "Get out of my shop, gladly." Richard smoothed his expensive tie. "I just thought Charlotte should know exactly what kind of man she's getting involved with." "I'll see you at the foundation meeting tonight, dear. We have much to discuss." After Richard left, the silence in the shop was deafening. Charlotte stood very still, her face pale. "Were you going to tell me?" Ethan couldn't meet her eyes. "There was nothing to tell. It's my problem to solve. I could help." "No." The word came out harsh and final. "That's exactly what I don't want. I won't be another charity case for the Whitmores to whisper about." "Is that what you think this is? Charity?" Charlotte's voice cracked slightly. "After everything we've shared?" Ethan said nothing, and after a moment, Charlotte turned and walked out. Through the shop window, he watched her climb into her car, wipe her eyes quickly, and drive away. The paper bag of food sat forgotten on the workbench, a reminder of simple kindness now tainted by pride and suspicion. By that evening, Ethan's phone was buzzing with messages from Charlotte's social circle. Somehow, Richard had spread the word about the foreclosure, spinning a tale of a desperate man trying to seduce his way into the Whitmore fortune. Each buzz felt like another nail in the coffin of whatever had been growing between him and Charlotte. Lily found him later, sitting alone in the darkened shop. "Dad? Why aren't you answering Charlotte's calls?" Ethan stared at the drawer containing the foreclosure notice. "Sometimes, honey, doing the right thing means knowing when to walk away. But, no buts." Ethan stood up, his decision made. "Come on, let's go home." The old church bells chimed 9 times as people filed into First Baptist Church that Sunday morning. Ethan adjusted his tie, the same one he'd worn to the gala, and walked up the worn stone steps with Lily beside him. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke from nearby chimneys. Inside, the familiar warmth of polished wooden pews and soft organ music usually brought Ethan peace. But today, something was different. As he and Lily made their way to their usual spot in the middle section, the usual friendly nods were replaced with darting glances and hushed conversations. "Did you hear about his shop?" A whisper floated from 2 rows back. "Charlotte Whitmore could do so much better," came another murmur from his left. Lily squeezed his hand, her young face creased with concern. "Dad, why is everyone acting weird?" Before Ethan could answer, Mrs. Peterson, who'd brought him casseroles for months after his wife died, quickly turned away when he caught her eye. His jaw tightened. The rumors had spread faster than he'd expected. The sound of expensive heels clicking on hardwood made heads turn. Charlotte walked down the center aisle, elegant in a simple blue dress. Instead of taking her usual seat near the front with the town's other prominent families, She slid into the pew beside Ethan and Lily. "Good morning," she whispered, her smile genuine despite the increasing volume of murmurs around them. Ethan's neck burned. "Charlotte, you don't have to." "I sit where I choose," she said firmly, though her eyes were gentle. "And I choose to sit with my friends." The organ swelled as the service began, but Ethan couldn't focus on Reverend Marshall's words about faith and community. Every cough, every rustling movement felt like another judgment. He noticed Charlotte's former mother-in-law, Margaret Whitmore, sitting ramrod straight in the front pew, her shoulders tense with disapproval. During the hymn, Ethan's usually strong voice remained silent. The words stuck in his throat as he thought about the foreclosure notice sitting in his desk drawer, about the whispers that he was just after Charlotte's money. His calloused hands gripped the hymnal too tightly. When the collection plate came around, Ethan placed his usual modest donation inside. He felt eyes on him, measuring, calculating. The plate moved to Charlotte, who placed her envelope in without fanfare, but Ethan knew people were wondering if she was already supporting him financially. After the sermon, during the usual social hour in the church basement, the divide became even more apparent. The usual cluster of veterans who always wanted to talk shop with Ethan suddenly found the coffee urn fascinating. Parents who'd trusted him to fix their cars for years steered their children toward other tables. Charlotte tried to bridge the gap, her natural grace drawing some people into conversation. But Ethan noticed how they'd glance at him with barely concealed pity or suspicion. "Mr. Walker," called out Tom Whitmore, Charlotte's brother-in-law, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Heard your shop's been having some troubles." Must be nice having such a generous friend these days. The basement fell quiet. Ethan's face burned as he saw Charlotte straighten, ready to defend him. But he couldn't stand to see her fight his battles, confirming everyone's worst assumptions. "Charlotte," he said quietly, his voice rough, "can we talk outside?" They stepped into the church garden, where late autumn roses still bloomed against the old brick walls. The morning sun had grown stronger, but Ethan felt cold inside. "Ethan, please don't let them get to you," Charlotte said, reaching for his hand. "What they think doesn't matter." He gently pulled away. "It does matter. Your reputation, your family's charity work, it all matters. Not more than what's real," she insisted. "Not more than what's growing between us." Ethan looked at her beautiful face, seeing the strength and compassion that had drawn him in from the start. But now that same strength felt like a sword hanging over his head. "I can't do this anymore," he said, the words tasting like ashes. "I can't be part of your life." "Ethan, you deserve someone who can stand beside you as an equal, someone who won't make you choose between your family and your heart." His voice cracked slightly. "Someone who won't bring you down." Charlotte stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "That's not your decision to make. I know my own mind and my own heart." But Ethan was already shaking his head, his military training helping him keep his posture straight despite the pain in his chest. "I'm sorry, Charlotte, I truly am." Without letting himself look back at her face, knowing it would break his resolve, Ethan walked away. His footsteps echoed against the church walls as he left behind not just Charlotte, but the hope of something he'd never thought he'd find again. The whispers may have started the cracks, but it was his own hand that delivered the final blow. As he walked away, the morning sun cast his shadow long and lonely across the church garden's dying roses. The sunset painted long shadows across Ethan's modest living room. As he pulled his old military duffel bag from the hall closet, dust motes danced in the golden light streaming through the windows. His movements were methodical, practiced the same way he'd packed for countless deployments years ago. Lily stood in the doorway of her bedroom, arms crossed tight against her chest. "Dad, you can't do this. We can't just leave." Ethan didn't look up as he folded a worn flannel shirt. "Sometimes starting fresh is the only way forward, sweetheart. That's not what Mom would have wanted." Lily's voice cracked. "She always said, running from problems just means you have to face them alone." Ethan's hands stilled on the shirt. Sarah had said that, hadn't she? His late wife had always been the brave one, facing life's challenges head-on with a smile that could light up the darkest day. "This town is our home," Lily continued, moving closer. "My friends are here. Your shop is here. Everything we've built is here." "The shop's as good as gone anyway," Ethan muttered, but his movements had lost their certainty. He picked up an old photo, frame him and Sarah on their wedding day, both so young and full of hope. So we'll fight for it. Lily's voice rose with determination. Charlotte would help if you just… No. Ethan set the frame down hard enough to make Lily jump. I won't be the man who took advantage of a wealthy widow. I won't prove those gossips right. But they're wrong about you. Lily crossed the room, grabbing his arm. And they're wrong about Charlotte, too. She sees you for who you really are. Ethan sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling every one of his 43 years. It's not that simple, Lilypad. Yes, it is. Lily sat beside him, using the childhood nickname to soften him up just like her mother used to do. You're just making it complicated because you're scared. I'm not scared, Ethan protested. But the words felt hollow even to him. I'm being realistic. You're being stubborn, Lily corrected. She reached for his hand, her smaller one fitting into his calloused palm. Remember when you taught me to ride a bike? What did you say when I was afraid of falling? A small smile tugged at his lips despite everything. That being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means doing the right thing anyway. Exactly. Lily squeezed his hand. And running away isn't the right thing. Not for you, not for me, and not for Charlotte. Ethan looked around their small living room at the photos on the walls, the scratched coffee table where Lily did her homework, the worn armchair where he'd read her bedtime stories. Every corner held memories, both painful and precious. I just want to protect you, he said softly. From the gossip, from seeing your old man fail. You haven't failed, Lily interrupted fiercely. You're the strongest person I know, but even strong people need help sometimes. The duffel bag sat half-packed on the floor, a testament to momentary weakness. Ethan stared at it, remembering all the times he'd had to be strong after Sarah's death, during his deployments, through countless lonely nights. But maybe Lily was right. Maybe true strength wasn't in standing alone, but in having the courage to let others stand with you. Across town, in her expansive bedroom, Charlotte knelt beside her bed. The elegant space felt empty despite its expensive furnishings. Moonlight filtered through gossamer curtains, casting gentle shadows on the Persian rug where her knees pressed into the soft pile. Lord, she whispered, clasping her hands tightly, I need your guidance more than ever. Tears threatened to fall as she thought of Ethan's face in church that morning, the proud set of his jaw, the pain he tried to hide. She'd seen how the whispers had cut him, how each sidelong glance had built another brick in the wall he was putting up between them. My heart tells me one thing, she continued, her voice trembling. But everyone around me says another. Thomas's family has been so good to me, kept his legacy alive through the foundation. She paused, remembering her late husband's gentle smile, his dedication to helping others. But then she thought of Ethan, his quiet strength, his unwavering integrity, the way he looked at her like she was more than just a wealthy widow, the way he made her feel alive again. Is it selfish to want happiness? She asked the silent room. To want someone who sees me for who I am, not what I represent? The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily, its rhythm somehow comforting in the quiet house. Charlotte wiped her eyes, remembering something her grandmother used to say. God speaks in the silence of the heart. Please, she prayed, her voice barely a whisper now. Show me the path. Help me find the courage to follow it, whatever it may be. She remained there, torn between duty and desire, between the expectations that had governed her life since Thomas's death and the unexpected joy she'd found in a humble mechanic's smile. The weight of the decision pressed on her heart like a physical thing. Outside her window, the moon cast its silver light on her garden, the same garden where she'd walked with Ethan and Lily, where for a brief moment everything had seemed possible. Now that possibility felt as fragile as morning dew, threatening to evaporate in the harsh light of reality. Charlotte closed her eyes, continuing her silent prayer. Whatever path she chose would change everything, not just for her, but for the foundation, for Thomas's family, for Ethan and Lily. The responsibility of it all felt overwhelming. Yet somewhere in the depths of her heart, a small voice whispered of hope, of second chances, of love that transcended social boundaries. She just needed the wisdom to know if that voice was divine guidance or her own wishful thinking. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Whitmore Mansion's formal dining room, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table. Charlotte sat straight-backed in her chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their slight trembling. Across from her, Richard and Margaret Whitmore, her late husband's parents, regarded her with their usual air of stern disapproval. The butler silently poured coffee into delicate bone china cups, the only sound in the tense atmosphere. Charlotte watched the steam rise from her cup, gathering her courage. She'd spent the entire night thinking about Ethan's dignity, his daughter's brave heart, and the simple authenticity of their lives. The choice before her had never been clearer. "I know why you've summoned me here," Charlotte said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "But before you start, I have something to say." Margaret's perfectly plucked eyebrows arched. "Dear, we're only concerned about—" "No." Charlotte's firm tone surprised even herself. "Please let me finish." Richard lowered his coffee cup with a sharp clink. "Very well. Speak your piece." Charlotte took a deep breath, drawing strength from the memory of Ethan teaching his daughter at the auto shop, their laughter echoing off the walls. "For 5 years since James passed, I've let you dictate every aspect of my life. The charities I support, the people I associate with, even where I live." She met their eyes directly. "That ends today, Charlotte." Margaret's voice took on its familiar patronizing tone. "Everything we've done has been to protect James's legacy and you. Has it?" Charlotte's question hung in the air. "Or has it been about controlling the family's image? About maintaining your idea of proper society?" Richard's face darkened. "Young lady, you're speaking to the people who welcomed you into this family, who've protected your interests." "You've protected your interests?" Charlotte corrected him gently. "And I'm grateful for everything you've done. But I've met someone who's shown me what real honor looks like." "That mechanic?" Margaret spat the word like it tasted bitter. "A man drowning in debt who's clearly after your money?" Charlotte felt a surge of protective anger. "Ethan Walker is a decorated veteran who raised his daughter alone while building his own business. He refused payment for helping me when we first met. He's never asked me for a single thing." She leaned forward, her voice intense. "Do you know what he did with his combat pay? He donated half of it to families of fallen soldiers." "Convenient stories," Richard scoffed. "You're being naive, Charlotte." "No." Charlotte stood slowly, placing her napkin beside her untouched coffee. "For the first time in years, I'm seeing clearly. Ethan has something you can't buy or understand: true integrity. He'd rather lose his business than ask for help, because his pride isn't about appearances. It's about earning his way honestly." Margaret's face flushed red. "If you continue this infatuation, you'll destroy everything James worked for. The Foundation's reputation." "James believed in helping people," Charlotte interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. "Real people. Not just those who wear the right clothes or belong to the right clubs. He would have admired Ethan." Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is your final warning, Charlotte. If you insist on throwing yourself away on this fortune hunter, we'll have no choice but to remove you from the Foundation's board. Your trust fund will be dissolved." "I know." Charlotte felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. "But I won't let you use James's money to control me anymore. I won't let you destroy a good man's reputation to maintain your social standing." "You ungrateful," Margaret sputtered. "I'm grateful for the years of guidance," Charlotte said softly. "But I choose honor over wealth. I choose real love over artificial status." She straightened her shoulders. "I choose Ethan." Richard's face turned purple with rage. "Then you choose poverty? We'll cut you off completely. Everything, the house, the cars, your position in society, gone." Charlotte walked to the dining room door, her heels clicking steadily on the polished floor. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. "What I choose is freedom, and it's worth more than everything in this house." The heavy door closed behind her with a quiet click, leaving her in-laws speechless in the sunny dining room. Charlotte's steps didn't falter as she walked through the mansion's marble foyer for what might be the last time. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years. The morning breeze caught her hair as she descended the front steps. Behind her, she could hear Margaret's shrill voice and Richard's angry bellowing, but their threats faded into meaningless noise. Charlotte smiled, feeling the warm sun on her face and thinking of Ethan's quiet strength, his daughter's bright spirit, and the simple, honest life they lived. She had chosen truth over pretense, love over money, and for the first time since James's death, she felt truly worthy of the life she'd been given. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same dignity she admired so much in Ethan. The chauffeur held open the car door, but Charlotte shook her head. "I'll drive myself today, Thomas. Thank you for everything." She walked past the luxury sedan to her own car, her steps sure and steady, leaving behind the golden cage that had held her for so long. In the rearview mirror, the Whitmore mansion grew smaller and smaller, until it disappeared completely. Charlotte didn't look back again. Her future, uncertain but full of promise, lay ahead. The morning heat pressed against Charlotte's skin as she parked her Mercedes in front of Mason's hardware store. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, gathering courage. This was the first stop on her mission to help Ethan, and she knew the town's opinion of her could make or break her plan. The bell above the door chimed as she stepped inside. The familiar scent of wood and metal filled the air. Behind the counter, Tom Mason looked up from his inventory clipboard, surprise crossing his weathered face. "Mrs. Whitmore?" He adjusted his glasses. "Something I can help you with?" Charlotte approached the counter, her heels clicking against the worn wooden floor. "Actually, Mr. Mason, I need to talk to you about Ethan Walker." Tom's expression shifted from surprise to concern. "Everything all right with Ethan?" "Not exactly." Charlotte lowered her voice. "I know about the foreclosure notice, and I know Ethan's too proud to ask for help." Tom set down his clipboard, his face softening. "Been worried about that boy. He's done so much for this town, never asks for anything in return." "That's why I'm here." Charlotte pulled a small notebook from her purse. "I want to organize a fundraiser. Something to show Ethan how much this community values him, but I need help from the people who know him best." Tom leaned forward, interest sparking in his eyes. "What did you have in mind?" For the next hour, Charlotte and Tom brainstormed ideas. Tom shared stories about Ethan's quiet acts of kindness, fixing Widow Johnson's heater in the dead of winter, teaching the high school shop class for free when their instructor fell ill, always finding ways to help others even when he was struggling himself. From Mason's Hardware, Charlotte visited Sarah at the diner where Ethan and Lily often ate. The bell jingled as she entered, and several customers looked up, whispering behind their hands. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron and approached. "Well, if it isn't the fancy lady herself. Coffee? Please." Charlotte settled onto a stool at the counter. "And maybe a moment of your time. It's about Ethan." Sarah's initial wariness melted as Charlotte explained her plan. Soon, they were huddled over coffee, Sarah contributing ideas and suggesting other people to contact. "You know," Sarah said, refilling Charlotte's cup, "I wasn't sure about you at first. Thought maybe you were just slumming it, playing with Ethan's feelings. But you really care about him, don't you?" Charlotte wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "More than I thought possible. He and Lily. They've shown me what real family feels like." Sarah nodded approvingly. "Well then, count me in. I'll handle the food for the event, and I know just the people to help spread the word." Throughout the day, Charlotte visited more of Ethan's friends. Pastor Mike at the local church offered the church hall for the event. Regina at the flower shop volunteered decorations. Even gruff old Bill from the Veterans Association softened when Charlotte shared her vision. "About time someone did something for that boy," Bill said, his voice rough with emotion. "He's been carrying everyone else's burdens for so long, never complaining." By late afternoon, Charlotte sat in her car outside the local print shop, reviewing her notes. The support from the townspeople had overwhelmed her. These people, who had initially viewed her with suspicion, had opened their hearts once they understood her genuine desire to help Ethan. Inside the print shop, Mary Jenkins listened intently to Charlotte's request for flyers. "My husband served with Ethan, you know," she said, pulling out paper samples. "Never met a more honorable man. We'll make these flyers special, and don't worry about the cost. Consider it my contribution." Together, they designed a simple but striking flyer. "Support our hero" stood out in bold letters, with details about the community fundraiser below. They carefully avoided any mention of the auto shop's financial troubles, focusing instead on celebrating Ethan's service to both country and community. "We'll have these ready by tomorrow morning," Mary promised. "I'll make sure they get distributed all over town." As Charlotte left the print shop, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The town's response had confirmed what she'd always known about Ethan. His impact on people's lives went far deeper than he realized. Back in her car, she checked her phone. Several messages from her in-laws remained unanswered. Their threats to cut her off financially no longer held power over her. She had found something more valuable than their money: a community built on genuine care and mutual support. The next morning, flyers began appearing around town. They showed up in shop windows, on community bulletin boards, and even on the church announcement board. Each one represented not just Charlotte's love for Ethan, but an entire community's desire to support one of their own. Charlotte stood outside the diner, watching Sarah tape a flyer to the front window. Across the street, Tom Mason did the same at his hardware store. The sight of those simple pieces of paper, multiplying across town like quiet declarations of support, filled her heart with hope. Sarah stepped back to admire her handiwork. "You know he's going to be stubborn about this," she said, glancing at Charlotte. "I know," Charlotte replied, smiling softly. "But sometimes the strongest people need to be reminded they don't have to carry their burdens alone." The morning sun caught the fresh ink on the flyers, making the words, "Support our hero," gleam like a promise. All around town, people stopped to read them, nodding in approval and already beginning to spread the word. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the dusty windows of Walker's auto shop. Ethan stood in his office, methodically emptying the drawers of his desk. Each item held a memory: the wrench his father had given him when he first opened the shop, a stack of Lily's crayon drawings from when she was little, and the worn business license that had represented his dreams for so many years. His calloused hands trembled slightly as he placed these treasures into a cardboard box. The weight of failure pressed heavily on his shoulders, made worse by the echoing emptiness of the garage bay where customer cars usually sat waiting for repair. Lily leaned against the office doorframe, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. She watched her father pack with growing distress. Her blue eyes clouding with tears she struggled to hold back. "Dad, please," she whispered. "We can't just leave. This shop is everything to us." Ethan paused, a framed photo of himself and Lily at her middle school graduation in his hands. "Sometimes, sweetheart, we have to make tough choices. Starting fresh somewhere else might be what's best for us." "Best for who?" Lily's voice cracked. "This isn't just about the shop. It's about running away because you're scared of what people might think." Ethan set the frame down carefully, turning to face his daughter. The truth in her words stung, but he kept his voice steady. "It's more complicated than that, Lily. The bank. Then let people help." Lily stepped into the office, her hands clenched into fists. "Charlotte wants to help. Our friends want to help. Why won't you let them?" "Because I need to handle this myself," Ethan replied, his jaw tightening. "I'm your father. It's my job to provide for us, to make sure we're okay." Tears finally spilled down Lily's cheeks. "But we're not okay, Dad. We're running away. You always taught me that running away doesn't solve anything. Remember when I wanted to quit the softball team because Jenny Thompson was being mean to me? You said facing our problems makes us stronger." The memory hit Ethan hard. He'd spent so many years trying to teach Lily about courage and integrity, and here she was, throwing those lessons back at him with wisdom beyond her years. "This is different," he managed, though his voice lacked conviction. "No, it's not." Lily's voice rose with emotion. "This is our home. These people are our family. Remember Mr. Rodriguez who brings you tamales every Christmas? Or Mrs. Chen who watched me after school when I was little? They're not just customers, Dad. They care about us." Ethan turned away, pretending to organize tools on his desk. The lump in his throat made it hard to speak. "Lily, the foreclosure." "I know about the foreclosure," Lily burst out. "I'm not a little kid anymore. I found the papers in your drawer last week." Surprise and guilt washed over Ethan's face. He'd tried so hard to protect her from his financial troubles. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lily countered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "We're supposed to be a team, remember? Ever since Mom died, you said it was just us against the world. But you're shutting me out. You're shutting everyone out." Ethan sank into his chair, suddenly feeling every year of his age. The weight of single parenthood, of maintaining his pride, of trying to be both mother and father to Lily, it all crashed down on him at once. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted quietly. Lily moved closer, placing her hand on his shoulder. "Maybe you don't have to know. Maybe you just have to be brave enough to let others help us figure it out." The simple wisdom in her words made Ethan's chest tighten. When had his little girl grown so wise? He reached up and covered her hand with his own, remembering all the times she'd been his strength without even knowing it. "This shop," Lily continued, her voice thick with emotion. "It's not just yours, Dad. It's ours. It's where I learned to change oil and replace spark plugs. It's where I did my homework after school. It's where Mom used to bring us lunch and sit on that old couch, laughing at your terrible jokes. Each memory she listed felt like a physical blow to Ethan's heart. The shop wasn't just a business. It was the keeper of their family's history, their hopes, their love. "Please," Lily pleaded, tears flowing freely now. "Please don't make us leave. We can figure something out. We always do." Ethan stood slowly, pulling his daughter into a tight hug. She buried her face in his shirt, her shoulders shaking with sobs. He held her close, remembering how tiny she'd once been, how she'd always looked at him like he could fix anything. "Okay," he whispered into her hair. "Okay, sweetheart. We'll try to figure something out." But as the words left his mouth, he still moved to the main switch panel. His heart heavy, he began turning off lights one by one. The familiar clicks echoed through the empty shop like gunshots. "Just let me lock up for tonight," he said softly. "We can talk more at home." Lily watched him, hope warring with fear in her eyes. The fluorescent lights went out one section at a time, leaving only the sunset's glow through the windows. Ethan's hand hovered over the final switch, the one that would plunge the shop into darkness. Just as his fingers touched the switch, voices drifted in from outside. The sound of voices and music drew Ethan to the front door of his shop. His hand trembled on the doorknob as he pushed it open, squinting in the bright evening sunlight. What he saw made him freeze in disbelief. The entire parking lot had transformed. Folding tables lined the edges, loaded with homemade pies, cakes, and cookies. Hand-painted signs proclaimed, "Support our hero," and "Walker's Auto Shop Forever." Children ran between the tables flying red, white, and blue streamers. The high school band played a cheerful tune near an improvised stage made from wooden pallets. "Dad, look!" Lily grabbed his arm, her eyes shining. "The whole town is here." Indeed, it seemed like everyone had come. Mrs. Peterson from the diner handed out her famous apple pies. Coach Thompson supervised a raffle table covered with donated prizes. Even gruff old Mr. Wilson, who'd complained about every repair bill for 20 years, stood manning a barbecue grill. "I don't understand," Ethan muttered, his throat tight. "How did they know?" "Because people care about you, Ethan," a familiar voice said behind him. He turned to find Charlotte, dressed simply in jeans and a blue blouse, looking more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. "They care about what you mean to this town." Before he could respond, Mayor Jenkins stepped onto the makeshift stage and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." The crowd quieted, turning toward the stage. "We're here today because one of our own needs our help. Ethan Walker has served this community in more ways than most folks know." Ethan felt his face flush as people nodded and called out in agreement. Lily squeezed his hand. "But before we continue," the mayor went on, "we have someone special who'd like to say a few words. Please welcome Charlotte Whitmore." The crowd applauded as Charlotte made her way to the stage. Ethan's heart pounded as she took the microphone, her eyes finding his in the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice clear and strong. "When I first came to this town, I was just another stranded motorist on the side of the road. But that day, I met a man who showed me what true character means. He fixed my car and refused payment, saying it was just what neighbors do." Murmurs of recognition rippled through the crowd. Several people patted Ethan's shoulder. "Since then, I've learned what many of you have known for years. Ethan Walker is more than just a mechanic. He's a father who works overtime to give his daughter dance lessons. He's a veteran who served our country with honor. He's the man who fixes Mrs. Miller's car at cost because he knows she's on a fixed income. He's the one who teaches local kids about auto repair so they can have a trade." Ethan blinked hard, fighting back emotion as Charlotte continued. "Some people," she said, her voice taking on an edge, "have suggested that Ethan's current difficulties somehow diminish his worth, that financial struggles somehow make him less honorable. Well, I'm here to tell you they're wrong." She paused, drawing herself up straight. "You see, I've lived in both worlds. I've attended charity galas where people write big checks just to see their names on plaques. And I've sat in Ethan's kitchen, watching him teach his daughter the value of hard work and integrity. Let me tell you which one holds more worth." The crowd had grown completely silent, hanging on her every word. Even the children had stopped playing to listen. "What I've learned from Ethan and this wonderful town is something my late husband always knew, but I'd somehow forgotten. Honor cannot be bought. True wealth is found in the courage to love, to serve, and to hope. Tears streamed freely down Lily's face now. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his own vision blurring. "That's why I'm not just here to make a speech," Charlotte declared. "I'm here to make an investment. As of this morning, I've pledged my own resources to save Walker's Auto Shop. Not as charity, but as a partnership. Because I believe in Ethan Walker and what he means to this community." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. People surged forward to hug Ethan and Lily. Mrs. Peterson wiped her eyes with her apron. Coach Thompson whistled through his fingers. Even Mr. Wilson cracked a smile. "I don't know what to say," Ethan managed when the noise died down. "I never expected." "Just say yes," Charlotte said, having made her way through the crowd to stand before him. Her eyes sparkled with tears and determination. "Say you'll accept help from people who care about you as much as you care about them." The crowd fell quiet again, waiting. Ethan looked around at all the familiar faces, neighbors he'd helped, friends he'd made, a community that had become family. He looked at Lily, seeing in her eyes the same pride she'd shown that night at the gala. Finally, he looked at Charlotte, who had somehow seen past his defenses to the heart of who he was. "Yes," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. The crowd exploded in celebration. The band struck up a joyful tune. People began dancing, eating, and bidding on raffle items. Children resumed their games, streamers flying in the golden evening light. Through it all, Charlotte stayed by Ethan's side, their shoulders touching as they watched their community come together. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, as if nature itself was celebrating this moment of triumph, when love and honor proved stronger than pride or fear, when a community showed its true heart, and when two people from different worlds found their way to each other through the simple truth of who they really were. Ethan's vision blurred as he looked across the sea of familiar faces. These were his neighbors, his customers, people whose cars he'd fixed countless times over the years. Some had paid him in homemade meals when money was tight. Others had watched Lily when he worked late. Now they were all here, rallying around him. Charlotte stepped onto the makeshift stage, her elegant sundress catching the golden evening light. The crowd hushed as she took the microphone, but Ethan could barely hear her words over the pounding of his heart. "Honor cannot be bought," she began, her voice clear and strong. "True wealth is found in the courage to love, to serve, and to hope." She turned to face Ethan directly, and no one embodies these qualities more than Ethan Walker. Ethan swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. Lily squeezed his hand as Charlotte continued. "This man has given everything for his country and his community. He's raised a remarkable daughter alone, fixed our cars at all hours, and never once asked for recognition or help." Charlotte's voice softened. "But sometimes the strongest thing we can do is let others stand beside us." She descended from the stage and walked toward him, her heels clicking against the pavement. The crowd parted like a wave. When she reached him, her eyes were filled with determination. "I want to invest in your shop, Ethan," she said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Not as charity, but as a business partner. This town needs Walker's Auto Shop. And I need." She paused, gathering courage. "I need to be part of something real. Something honest." Ethan shook his head, his voice rough with emotion. "Charlotte, I can't accept your money. You've already done too much." "It's not about money," she insisted, taking a step closer. "It's about partnership, about building something together." She gestured to the crowd. "Look around, Ethan. Every person here believes in you. Why won't you believe in yourself?" Old Mrs. Jenkins called out from behind her cookie table. "She's right, Ethan Walker. Stop being so stubborn." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Ethan felt his cheeks flush, but he couldn't help smiling. More voices joined in. "We need you here, Ethan. Don't you dare leave town. Think about Lily." His daughter tugged at his sleeve. "Dad," she whispered, "Mom would want you to accept help. She always said you were too proud for your own good." The mention of his late wife hit him hard. He remembered her gentle teasing about his stubborn independence, her constant reminders that it was okay to lean on others sometimes. Looking at Charlotte now, he saw the same wisdom in her eyes. "This isn't just about saving the shop," Charlotte said softly. "It's about admitting that sometimes love means letting someone else share your burdens." She held out her hand. "I'm not trying to rescue you, Ethan. I'm asking to walk beside you." The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The high school band had stopped playing, and the only sounds were the rustle of leaves and the quiet murmur of the crowd. Everyone waited, watching. Ethan looked at Charlotte's extended hand. In it, he saw more than just financial salvation for his shop. He saw friendship, understanding, and the possibility of love. He saw a future where he didn't have to carry everything alone. His own hand trembled slightly as he reached out. The moment their fingers touched, a cheer erupted from the crowd. Charlotte's smile was radiant as their hands clasped firmly together. A simple gesture that spoke volumes about trust, acceptance, and new beginnings. Lily threw her arms around both of them, and suddenly they were surrounded by well-wishers. Mr. Thompson from the hardware store clapped Ethan on the back. Mrs. Peterson wiped tears from her eyes while balancing a pie tin. Even some of the teenagers from the band came over to offer congratulations. Through it all, Ethan didn't let go of Charlotte's hand. For the first time in years, he felt the weight on his shoulders begin to lift. He wasn't just accepting help. He was accepting love, community, and the truth that real strength sometimes means having the courage to open your heart. Charlotte squeezed his hand gently, and when their eyes met, they both knew this was more than a business partnership. It was the beginning of something deeper, something that had started with a broken-down car and was now blooming into a promise of shared tomorrows. Standing there, surrounded by the warmth of community and the touch of Charlotte's hand in his, Ethan finally understood what true wealth meant. It wasn't about money in the bank or the size of your house. It was about the richness of connections, the strength of community, and the courage to let love in when it appears at your door. The evening air was filled with laughter, music, and the sweet smell of baked goods as the fundraiser continued around them. But for Ethan and Charlotte, the world had narrowed to the simple connection of their joined hands and the knowledge that neither of them would have to face tomorrow alone. The early morning sun streamed through the freshly cleaned windows of Ethan's auto shop, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The familiar scent of motor oil and grease mingled with something new, the sharp smell of fresh paint and renewal. Ethan stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, taking in the scene before him. Charlotte and Lily were perched on stepladders, their clothes speckled with pale blue paint, working on opposite walls of the waiting area. Both wore old t-shirts and jeans, a far cry from Charlotte's usual elegant attire. But she looked more at home than ever. "Dad!" Lily called out, waving her paint roller. "What do you think? Charlotte picked the perfect color, right?" The walls were transforming from their tired beige to a soft, welcoming blue that reminded him of clear summer skies. He had to admit, it made the whole place feel brighter, more alive. "It's looking good," he said, his voice warm with appreciation. "Though you two seem to be wearing as much paint as you're putting on the walls." Charlotte turned, a streak of blue across her cheek, and laughed. "Well, someone's daughter started it." She shot a playful glance at Lily, who tried to look innocent and failed miserably. "Hey, you're the one who said this was supposed to be fun," Lily protested, grinning. The sound of their laughter echoing through the shop stirred something in Ethan's chest. For so long, these walls had held only the quiet efficiency of work and the weight of his struggles. Now, they rang with joy. Moving to his desk, Ethan spread out the paperwork Charlotte had helped him organize. The partnership agreement was simple but fair. She would invest in expanding the shop, and they would share the profits. But more than that, it was a symbol of trust, of believing in each other. "Oh, watch this, Charlotte." Lily's voice pulled his attention back. She was showing Charlotte how to cut in along the ceiling edge, something Ethan had taught her when they painted her room last year. Charlotte listened intently, her face serious with concentration, as if Lily's every word was precious knowledge. "You're a natural teacher, Lily," Charlotte said, following the teenager's instructions carefully. "Just like your father." Ethan watched as his daughter straightened with pride. Lily had taken to Charlotte so easily, sharing stories about her mother without the usual sadness, asking for help with homework, even confiding about school drama. It was as if Charlotte had filled a space they hadn't even realized was empty. The morning wore on, and the transformation continued. Not just of the walls, but of the spirit of the place. Charlotte had brought in potted plants for the corners, and Lily had arranged family photos, including some of her mother, on a newly painted shelf. They weren't erasing the past, but building on it, making room for new memories alongside the old. During their lunch break, they sat on old milk crates in a circle, sharing sandwiches and cold drinks. Charlotte's eyes crinkled with laughter as Lily told stories about Ethan's most interesting customers, and Ethan found himself joining in, sharing tales he'd almost forgotten. "Remember Mrs. Henderson's cat?" he asked, and Lily nearly choked on her drink. "The one that lived under her car?" Charlotte leaned forward, interested. "That cat," Ethan explained, "would not let anyone near that car except me. Used to hiss at every other mechanic in town. Mrs. Henderson swore it was because I had honest eyes." "She was right about that," Charlotte said softly, meeting his gaze. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken understanding. After lunch, they returned to work with renewed energy. Ethan focused on rebuilding an engine while Charlotte and Lily finished the painting, their cheerful chatter providing a pleasant backdrop to his work. Occasionally, he'd glance up to find Charlotte watching him with that look that still made his heart skip, like she saw something in him worth believing in. The afternoon light began to soften, filtering through the windows in golden streams. Lily had switched on the radio, and an old country song played quietly. Charlotte hummed along as she put the finishing touches on the trim, swaying slightly to the music. Ethan set down his wrench and stepped back, taking in the whole scene. The shop that had been his burden for so long now felt different. The fresh paint, the plants, the photos, the laughter. It was more than just a workplace now. It was becoming a home again. He watched as Charlotte helped Lily clean the paintbrushes, showing her how to work the bristles against her palm to get them truly clean. They worked in comfortable synchronization, as if they'd been doing this together for years instead of days. Their heads bent together, dark and fair, both focused on their task, both part of his world in a way he'd never expected. The sight hit him with sudden clarity. This was what healing looked like. This was what it meant to let love in again, not replacing what was lost, but growing something new from the fertile soil of the past. His heart felt full, watching these two people who had become so dear to him, working together to make his dreams shine again. Charlotte looked up then, catching his eye. "Everything okay?" she asked, her smile gentle and knowing. "Yeah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Everything's just right." Lily glanced between them and smiled, paint still smudged on her nose. "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" Ethan nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He watched them return to their task, their movements easy and natural together, and knew with absolute certainty that he had found his way home again. Not to the past, but to a future he never could have imagined, one filled with both love and family, brightened by the laughter of the two people who had painted his world with new colors. The grand reopening of Walker's Auto Shop brought the whole town together on a bright Saturday morning. Red, white, and blue bunting decorated the freshly painted exterior, and the chrome letters above the entrance gleamed in the sunlight. The parking lot bustled with activity as people milled around folding tables laden with homemade pies and lemonade. Ethan stood near the entrance, looking sharp in clean work clothes with the shop's new logo embroidered on the chest pocket. His weathered hands shook slightly as he cut the ceremonial ribbon, overwhelmed by the crowd's warm applause. Charlotte stood beside him, beaming with pride, while Lily bounced excitedly on her toes. "I declare Walker's Auto Shop officially reopened for business," Ethan announced, his voice thick with emotion. The gathered townspeople cheered, and several elderly veterans in their service caps approached to shake his hand. "First order of business," Ethan said, clearing his throat. "Any veteran over 65 gets free basic maintenance and repairs." The announcement brought another round of applause, and Charlotte squeezed his arm, knowing this had been his dream for years. Inside the shop, everything sparkled. The concrete floor had been sealed and polished to a professional shine, and the tools were organized with military precision on pegboards painted the same pale blue as the walls. The waiting area featured comfortable chairs and a coffee station, Charlotte's touch, while still maintaining the honest, hard-working atmosphere Ethan had always cultivated. Mr. Jenkins, an 80-year-old Korean War veteran, was the first to take advantage of the free service program. He rolled up in his ancient pickup truck, which had been making suspicious noises for months. Ethan got right to work, showing Lily how to properly diagnose the problem while Charlotte kept Mr. Jenkins company. Never thought I'd see the day, Mr. Jenkins said, watching father and daughter work together. That girl's got natural talent, just like her daddy. Charlotte nodded, pouring him a fresh cup of coffee. They're quite the team. Throughout the morning, more customers arrived, some for repairs, others just to show their support. Charlotte had set up a small table near the entrance, where she spoke with people about her new initiative, the Walker's Auto Shop Scholarship Fund. We're going to help local students pursue vocational training, she explained to Mrs. Thompson, the high school guidance counselor. The world needs more skilled technicians with Ethan's integrity and work ethic. The program would cover tuition and tools for promising students interested in automotive careers. Charlotte's eyes frequently drifted to where Lily worked alongside her father, knowing the teenager had already announced her intention to be the fund's first recipient. Around noon, the local diner delivered lunch for everyone, Charlotte's treat. The shop's garage doors were rolled up to let in the spring breeze, and people sat in clusters sharing food and stories. Ethan took a brief break to eat, grease still staining his hands despite repeated washing. You've created something special here, Charlotte said softly, handing him a sandwich. We created it, he corrected her, no longer hesitant to acknowledge their partnership. Never thought I'd see this place looking so good, or helping so many people. Lily joined them, her face smudged with engine grease, but wearing a huge smile. Dad, you should see how many appointments we've already booked. We're going to need help. Already taken care of, Charlotte said. 2 graduates from the technical college are starting next week. And guess who's going to help train them? Lily's eyes widened. Really? Me? Ethan nodded, pride evident in his expression. You've earned it, kiddo. You know this shop almost as well as I do now. The afternoon brought more veterans seeking repairs, including some who hadn't been able to afford proper maintenance for years. Ethan treated each case with the same careful attention, explaining everything he did in simple terms while teaching Lily the finer points of diagnostic work. Charlotte moved between helping at the front desk and documenting everything for the scholarship fund's records. She'd already received several donations from local businesses inspired by the shop's veteran program. The sight of Ethan patiently working with both his daughter and elderly veterans made her heart swell with affection. As the sun began to set, the last customers left with repaired vehicles and grateful handshakes. Ethan closed the big garage doors while Lily cleaned tools and Charlotte balanced the day's books. The shop felt different now, warmer somehow, filled with the energy of new beginnings and shared purpose. Time to head home, Ethan announced, looking tired but content. I think we've got some celebrating to do. Their short drive home was quiet, each lost in thoughts about the day's events. At Ethan's modest house, now familiar to Charlotte as her second home, they worked together to prepare a simple dinner. Lily set the table while Charlotte and Ethan moved around each other in the kitchen with practiced ease. They sat down to plates of grilled chicken and vegetables, the dining room warm with the glow of success and family connection. Charlotte had brought a bottle of sparkling cider to mark the occasion, and they raised their glasses in a quiet toast. To the new Walker's Auto Shop, Charlotte said. To family, Ethan added, looking at both his girls with deep affection. To fixing things together, Lily chimed in, making them all laugh. As they ate, they talked about plans for the shop's future, expanding the veteran program, growing the scholarship fund, and training new technicians. Lily shared her ideas for a summer workshop for middle school girls interested in mechanics, while Charlotte discussed partnerships with local schools. Ethan mostly listened, taking in the sight of his daughter and the woman he loved, sharing dreams and plans across his dinner table. The weight of years spent struggling alone had lifted, replaced by something lighter and full of possibility. The shop wasn't just his livelihood anymore. It had become the heart of their shared future. The rising sun painted the eastern sky in gentle strokes of pink and gold, casting long shadows across the freshly paved parking lot of Walker's Auto Shop. Morning dew sparkled on the new flower beds that lined the entrance, Charlotte's touch adding softness to the industrial setting. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the promise of a beautiful spring day. Ethan sat on the wooden bench he'd built himself, positioned perfectly to catch the morning light. The coffee in his well-worn thermos steamed in the cool air as he took a contemplative sip. His work clothes were fresh and clean, the shop's logo bright against the dark fabric. Gone were the constant worry lines that had creased his forehead for so many years. Charlotte settled beside him, elegant even in casual clothes, her own coffee served in one of the delicate mugs she'd brought from home. They now kept a set in the shop's break room, a small symbol of how their worlds had merged. Her shoulder pressed warmly against his, and she reached for his free hand, intertwining their fingers with natural ease. Lily sprawled on the grass in front of them, her back against the bench, nursing a hot chocolate instead of coffee. She'd insisted on coming in early, excited about the new training program starting that day. Her notebook lay open beside her, filled with sketches of engines and lists of parts, studying even in these quiet moments. "The shop looks different in this light," Ethan said softly, his eyes taking in the restored building. The fresh paint gleamed, and the new sign caught the morning rays, making the chrome letters shine. "Almost like a dream." Charlotte squeezed his hand. "A dream you built with your own hands," she reminded him. "Every nail, every board." "We built," he corrected her, the words coming easier now. "I never would have made it without you both." Lily tilted her head back to look up at them, her eyes bright. "Remember when the roof leaked every time it rained? Now look at it, better than new." They all glanced up at the solid new roof, remembering the weeks of work it had taken. Ethan had insisted on doing most of the labor himself, with help from other local contractors who'd refused to let him pay full price. The community's support still humbled him. "I found something yesterday," Charlotte said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out an old photograph, creased and worn at the edges. "Mrs. Jenkins brought it by." The photo showed the shop as it had been 30 years ago, when Ethan's father first opened it. The same basic structure, but weathered and simple. A young man in uniform stood proudly in front, just back from Vietnam. "Dad never got to see it like this," Ethan said quietly, touching the photo with gentle fingers. "He always dreamed of helping other vets. But times were tough back then." "He'd be so proud," Charlotte said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Not just of the shop, but of the man you've become, the father you are." Lily nodded vigorously. "And you're teaching me everything he taught you, plus all the new stuff, like those hybrid engine diagnostics we learned last week." The morning light strengthened, warming their faces. A few early birds chirped in the young trees Charlotte had helped plant along the property line. The scene was peaceful, domestic in a way Ethan had stopped hoping for after losing his wife. "You know what Mom would say about all this?" Lily asked suddenly, her voice soft but steady. They'd been talking about her more lately, healing instead of hurting. "She'd say it's exactly what we deserve. She always believed in you, Dad." Ethan swallowed hard, but his smile was genuine. "She'd have loved seeing you in here, working on engines just like you used to work on your toy cars. And she'd adore Charlotte," Lily added with certainty. "Because Charlotte sees you the same way she did, as the honorable man you are, not what you own or what you can give." Charlotte blinked back tears, touched by the girl's words. She'd never tried to replace Lily's mother, but their bond had grown naturally, built on shared love for Ethan and genuine affection for each other. The sun climbed higher, its rays now reaching the new scholarship board they'd mounted by the entrance. Several local students had already applied, eager for the chance to learn the trade from Ethan. The program would ensure his knowledge and values would be passed on to a new generation. "Sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed," Ethan admitted, looking around at the transformed property. "A year ago, I was ready to give up, sell everything, run away." "But you didn't," Charlotte reminded him. "You stayed and fought. You let people help. Let them show you the same kindness you've always shown others. Let love in," Lily added wisely, sounding older than her years. "Both of you did." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their drinks and watching the day brighten. The shop would open soon, bringing the usual busy rhythm of customers and repairs. But this quiet moment felt sacred. Ethan looked at his daughter, so grown up and capable. Then at Charlotte, whose strength and grace had helped rebuild not just his business, but his heart. The morning sun warmed his face, and he felt a deep sense of peace settle in his chest. "Honor, love, and faith," he said thoughtfully, the words carrying the weight of truth. "That's what built this new life." Charlotte smiled softly, her eyes full of joy as she squeezed his hand. "This is just the beginning." What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Walker, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.